Second now. Yeah, it's live now. Go ahead, bro. If you want to do the intro, if you want to have the honors, you got the cool shades on. I don't. So.
What's up? Are we live? Okay, we're live.
Yeah, we're live, bro.
So, what's up, guys? We'll let it fill up a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, we should probably start. We should probably have a little intro video that we just roll, because you can do that on StreamYard. You can just let it roll, and people can, as we wait for it, be like a 2-minute video, like how Exertus does.
Do you have a Coquina Cowboys intro on tap?
On tap, I think so. Let me see here. Actually, yeah. Let's see here. CC intro. Let it upload, and then I'll play it. It's only 30 seconds long, so it should be quick. Yeah. And as people get in here, I got some people on my side, some people on your side. It's going on my channel as well too. I'm gonna run the CC intro.
Alrighty.
So yeah, we'll let it fill up a little bit, and we'll let this play. Here we go.
Cocaine is a hell of a drug.
I love how there's a white guy and then the brown guy in there. Did you intentionally do that?
Yep.
Nice. It looks like it was made for us, but yeah, want to let the people know what we're here for, dude, because you've never called me faster. I've never seen you move so fast as soon as you learned about this news, and you hit me up immediately. So I don't know if you want to give it a little intro, a little synopsis, the thesis, bro.
Sure. So Juan and I have been interested in the Bach Tower pretty much since the moment we met. And prior to when we both met, we were separately interested in the Bach Tower. Basically, there is a tower in Central Florida made of pink marble, and it was made in, I think, 1927, around there, completed around there. And, it's mysterious to say the least. It's on the tallest part of peninsular Florida. There we go. There's a picture. And it's made from Coquina, of course. Because after all, we're the Coquina Cowboys. And it's made from Coquina and I think pink marble or pink granite, predominantly. But, so if you've been watching our channels, you've probably seen us cover the Bach Tower a little bit. But when I found out something, shout out to a subscriber of mine by the name of Taylor, right? Taylor sent me something that I couldn't fathom coming across on my own. Basically, it was a story, a first-hand account, essentially, of a little person, a dwarf, a hobbit, an elf, a troll, a homunculus. We're not sure yet. We're going to find out. We're going to find out in this episode. We're going to flip every stone that we need to. But I think we've got some answers for you guys. So let's get right down into it.
Yeah, dude. I don't know if you want to just talk about, first of all, Iron Mountain, which is one of the highest points in Florida.
They thought it was the highest point at the time. I think it's the highest point in peninsular Florida.
Yes.
Or highest natural point. Right.
And it's part of a natural ridge. Have you seen that? It's kind of trippy. Where it's
Well,
like you saw that, right?
Yeah, they say it's natural.
Oh,
but
well, yeah, exactly. So this Iron Mountain, the folklore behind it, and it's 295 feet above sea level, and it contains, I don't know the name of these stones, but some weird stones, and it's kind of like a reddish brown color. And it's just, the ridge is located just north of the city of Lake Wales, where the Bach Tower is. And I've been there once. It's pretty breathtaking, because when you're at the top of this ridge, you can literally see 4 miles. It's not like any typical place in Florida you can see 4 miles, but the lore behind that area, that mountain, right, is that supposedly it was worshipped by the indigenous people because of a meteorite that had fallen and supposedly magnetized the area. So that's the folklore behind it, where it's this central point. I know you've talked about the, what do you guys call it? The Ben stones, I think that's what you guys call it. The stones that are magnetized, that draw people in. What's the name of it? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Lodestone.
Lodestones.
Ben stone. Follow stones, but lodestone is pretty much what you're thinking of.
So I relate it to that. And the garden came first before the tower. Now, let me pull up here we can get into the specifics of the tower, you know, with what it's made out of and all this stuff. And I mean, we've been talking about going there for a little bit now, but it is 250 acres, garden and bird sanctuary at the very top of Iron Mountain, north of Lake Wales, Florida. And it was formerly known as the Bach Mountain Lake Sanctuary and Singing Tower. And from what I gathered was that there was something already there before the actual tower was built. Now, I want to bring up the layout. There's like a cutout of the entire bridge, because it's got different rooms, and it's got, one of the rooms has the biggest library on bells, I think it is. Carlin, an interior. I don't even know that that's how you say it, but the interior is not generally open to the public. The first floor was Edward W. Bach's study, and is now the founder's room, and we can pull that up here in a little bit, because it's got like a weird star in the center of it. Kind of gives me kind of Freemasonic secret society vibes. The second floor houses the Cow Research Center archives. And that family that donated to have that archive made is the 36th or 37th most wealthiest family when I looked up, they were like in Texas, but they're number 60 something in the world, bro. They're a very wealthy Chinese family. And they donated to have this archive built, a whole floor in this tower. The third floor contains water tanks, which were used for the garden, that are now empty. But again, water tanks in such a big tower, because the tower is huge, bro. I don't know if you've been there yet, but the tower is giant. It's huge. And the fourth floor is a workroom. The fifth houses the Anton Breeze Carillon Library, and it's said to be the largest library of that type of music in the world. So, I know. Do you have the book tonight with you, the America's Taj Mahal?
I don't have the book on hand. That will be another video going through the book. But basically, we're actually not talking much about inside the tower tonight, but still. Could I show a picture?
Yeah, can you bring up your screen and I'll pull it up. So, Edward Bach, he wanted to, how the story goes was that he would sit and he would look upon the side of this Iron Mountain, and he would talk about how beautiful it was, and he literally called it a spot of beauty second to none in the country. And when he hired the architect Milton B. Medary to design it, he wanted him to design, quote, the most beautiful tower in the world. And I'm going to pull up your screen now.
There we go.
Everybody wants to talk about the homunculus, bro. Yeah, I can see that, bro.
Nothing. There we go. Keep going.
What you want to talk about that?
No.
Oh, you just wanted to show it? Come on, bro. So
Yeah.
So this guy, the Edward Bach, he eventually wrote a book in 1929, and he died fairly early. On January 9, 1930, he was only 66. And of course, he was buried right in front of the tower for some weird reason, in front of the great brass door, which I'm pulling up now, designed by and carved out or pounded out. I don't know what the word would be for this type of art, because it's literally like an engraving of the story of Genesis. And I know we've talked about this before, but it's got this, what I would call it alchemical. These weird engravings on there, and he's buried literally right in front of this door.
Mm-hmm.
And this is him sitting where Edward Bach is happiest in his garden. So he's reflecting upon the pond or something there. And this place is pretty surreal when you go there, dude. They got koi. The moat is 15. I've read 15 feet deep in some things, or 15 feet wide. So pretty deep moat. And it's what I consider a microcosm of the Garden of Eden, because that's what
he said. He was trying to rival the Garden of Eden.
Did he really?
When he built it, yeah.
Interesting. So it's got a trail. I think it's like a mile and a half, and I've walked all this. There's this place you can just sit here and look at the wildlife. It's a really dope area, and this is the founder's room. So here, I don't know if you can see this. It's a
founders.
It's a star. It's I think it's a 6-pointed star.
Founders, keepers.
And it's a very interesting place. You have all this here. There's a bunch of koi in here. You could feed the koi. And I don't know if you want to talk about the the sundial.
Well, we'll get into the sundial a little bit later, but there is a sundial, and on that sundial are the 12 signs of the zodiac. Now, we're going to get into this, and it's going to be clear that Edward Bach knew his astrology. And we're going to see that Eeyore Bach of Finland also knew his astrology. And it's going to come down to the color of the tower, the materials that were used. And I'm going to do another episode where I'm going to show how the Tampa Bay Hotel, the material that was used, stainless steel, how that relates to the just the owner's birthday, right? Henry Plant's birthday. But basically, Edward Bach was a Libra. So just keep that in mind going forward. Edward Bach is a Libra.
I mean, to me, that you're the astrology guy, bro. I don't know what any of that means. I know I've talked to you on my show about it, and I have people asking me about astrology all the time because they see you on my channel, and I'm like, just reach out, dude, because I literally don't know anything about astrology. But we can relate the tower symbolism, again, very fallacy. Any alchemist or wizard, right? There's always a tower. Now, in the official Dungeons and Dragons lore, the reason why a wizard has a tower is for more of like a tactical standpoint. It's better for astrology because you are the trees aren't in the way. You could have a clear view of the night sky. So there's also that aspect to it, the astrological aspect, where you're able to see it. Obviously, the representation, like I said, the phallus, and it's got a moat around 15-foot moat around it, so it's more of a tactical standpoint where they're able to see all around. And what I wanted to talk to you about too, there's also this house, Pinewood, that is on the property as well. Now we can get into this guy here in a little bit, but it's again very Moorish style home, and I haven't found any more pictures of it, but I'll dig them up. And what we're getting at, that story that you were talking about the runaway homunculus or gnome or elemental or fairy or something. every every alchemist has either a familiar or a homunculus. Could be considered a familiar, and a homunculus does the bidding of its creator. It does the bidding of whoever created it, no questions asked, and it's a talisman of some sorts. Now, that story that you're talking about, it goes 0 to 100 real quick. It's from the 50s, 1950s, and allegedly it's a woman who lived near the tower, and she could see the tower from where she was at, and her family owned a grove. And one night they said that it was on one of the main roads, so you have the circus going through there. You have a lot of traffic going through there, so they saw that they had oranges missing.
You want to read it?
I mean, yeah, do you have it pulled up?
Yeah, can I read it? I have pictures.
Yeah. I love your voice, bro. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah.
I'm going to put you on the spotlight, dude. Check this out. Hey.
Okay. Here, let me share my screen.
All right. Let's pull it up. And yeah, I don't know if you want to read it or not.
Yeah, I'm going to read it.
Well, so somebody said along with the dragons. Well, the dragons are the freaking gators here in Florida. I mean, that's also an alchemical symbol. And there was literally some tribes believe that these alligators were bad omens sent by, whatever god they believed in to terrorize their tribe. So you could relate the alligator to the Ouroboros. Again, another alchemical symbol.
So
you have it pulled up, bro?
Yeah, Juan, maybe you can pull up like relevant pictures as we go along.
Okay.
Please. Okay, here we go. Gnomes of Bach Tower. Once again, we are drawn to the mysterious location called Iron Mountain. It is the highest point on the Florida Peninsula at 298 feet above sea level. While not a dizzying height by any standard, it is in a state where the average height is 25 feet above sea level. It is quite impressive. Some legends state that it was created by a mysterious meteorite from space millions of years ago. Fake space in parentheses. The native tribes of the era knew it to be a sacred place and held it in high regard. So, stop here. That is a lodestone, by the way. A meteorite. Lots of meteorites were worshipped, hauled away, crafted into sacred objects, stuff like that. So, and we're resuming. Edward Willem Gerard Caesar Hitty Bach was born in the Netherlands in 1863. He immigrated to America at the age of 6. A poor boy, no skills in English, he struggled on the streets to find coal for his family in Brooklyn while trying to find work to support his family. As he grew up into a young man, he eventually became a highly successful publisher, a Pulitzer Prize-winning author, and a respected champion of human rights and environmentalism. As a publisher of the Ladies' Home Journal, and we're going to talk about the Ladies' Home Journal in a little bit, but he launched crusade after crusade against indignities he saw. He helped coin the phrase living room to get people to actually spend time in their parlors, which helped transform the modern family. So he coined the term living room. Think about that. His autobiography in 1920, The Americanization of Edward Bach, the autobiography of a Dutch boy, 50 years later, was so well received that it won the Pulitzer for Best Autobiography in 1921. I've read it. It's not that good. So As Bach visited from his Pennsylvania home to the winter retreat he had made for his family near Lake Wales, Florida, he became fascinated by the views from the nearby Iron Mountain. One sunset in particular awed him so much that he wrote that it would touch the soul with its beauty and quiet. He decided then there to build a bird sanctuary. He purchased a large piece of land on the mountain and began to transform it into a lush garden. He garnered the services of Frederick Law Olmsted Jr., a famous landscape architect, and they began to change the sandhill of Iron Mountain into a spot of further beauty. Nearly a year was spent simply digging trenches and laying water pipes for irrigation. So pause, we're going to come back to that too, or touch on that. Laying water pipes for irrigation. Near Lake Wales. He then ordered black soil by the thousands of tons and had it shipped to the gardens. The planting began for subtropical plants and trees, which still provide shade for visitors today. He then began to build a reflecting pool to attract wildlife. This was a great success, as it is now home to over 126 species of migratory birds throughout the calendar year. At the heart of what Bach was calling the Mountain Lake Sanctuary, he built a beautiful 60-bell carillon, I don't know how to pronounce it, carillon tower, dubbing it the Singing Tower. He presented the gardens to the American people as a gift on February 1st, 1929, as his enduring appreciation for the opportunities that only this country could have afforded him. The tower alone, with its pink marble blended with the Florida Coquina stone, is a marvel to behold and well worth the visit. The beautiful carillon, now with 71 bells, rings out beautiful music to guests and tourists who go for picnics and just to marvel at the wonderful garden still on display today. The area around the mountain still has legends and tales. Nearby Spook Hill is of note and discussed in the previous chapter. While only 2 miles away, it is not truly in sight of the tower. There is one odd tale that we have to tell that lies just outside the gardens. So here we go, guys. We're getting into it now. In 1955, Edwina Rankin was a young girl on her aunt's orange grove in Lake Wales. It was well within sight of the Singing Tower, and she recalled hearing its bells ring out hymns and pleasant tunes at all hours of the day. She would help her aunt and their laborers work the trees. It was truly back-breaking work once harvest time began. That year stands out with her strongly, as they noticed an unusually large number of oranges seeming to go missing from the trees. While rats and other pests could account for some of the missing fruit, there was a lingering doubt that a neighboring family might be stealing the fruit, or even passing circus folk, whom she referred to as her family's fear of gypsies. She was only 7 at the time, so she paid it no mind. Next page. Her aunt paid an exterminator to go out and put traps among the orange trees to see if there was just too many rats in the area, or maybe some other troublesome pest. What they caught was something she would never forget. Edwina tells of the capture of a small naked man, no larger than a foot tall. The man was screaming in a foreign tongue and covered in short hair. They knew he was no child, as he had a full face of hair. The aunt told Edwina that he must be a Lilliputian from Gulliver's Travels, fearing they had injured some circus performer, or even one of Ripley's Believe It or Not, exhibits that had come from St. Augustine. They let the man go, particularly since they couldn't understand a thing the little man said. More crops went missing over the next few weeks, and they felt it certainly couldn't be the work of the strange intruder they had captured weeks earlier. So more traps were placed out. Within days, the little man had been caught again. This time, the authorities were called, and not knowing what to do with the man, the family placed him in an orange crate with holes in it, wrecked. The police arrived and were confused by this diminutive man as well. They took him into custody and drove away in their police car. And there's a picture of the man in the crate.
I'm going to pull it up now because I have the...
Nice.
So...
Edwina says the next night was horrific. So they just took, basically, at this point in the story, they just took this little man to jail. Okay?
You think they put little handcuffs on him, bro, or they just like let him chill in the box?
I don't know. Edwina says the next night was horrific. Dozens of the little men swarmed their house, screaming and throwing stones at their home. Her aunt was convinced that they were demanding their lost brother back. So she phoned the police again. They brought the captured man back and let him loose. He and the others vanished quickly into the grove. Unsure what to do, the police simply left, and Edwina's family looked for alternative solutions to their problem. Here's where it gets interesting, right? More interesting.
Yeah.
One of the Irish farmhands said that the little people appeared to be similar to the gnomes, or red hats of legends from his home country. He told them the only way to be rid of them was to get a sacred stone from Ireland shipped here and blessed by a priest. This would give the gnomes something to understand that this place was sacred and to not steal fruit from it. The aunt had the farmhand send word back to Ireland to make the arrangements for a sacred stone to be acquired. She wasn't allowed to watch the ceremony. So repeat that. She wasn't allowed to watch the ceremony. But Edwina swears to this day that after the rock was put in place, no more little men ever stole their fruit. Edwina visited the farm for many years and lived in nearby Lake Wales until her passing. The family sold the grove to a large family firm sometime later. The area where the stone supposedly still lies is currently where the new owners of the farm keep their beehives to help pollinate the orange grove. So it is best not to try to visit today, of course, right?
Yeah. How convenient.
However, if you do see any little men stealing your fruit, it might be a good idea to get on the phone to Ireland to get a big rock. And that's the end of the story about this little man.
All right, so I'm gonna bring something up. I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but there is a law in Florida that was passed this year where you cannot exploit dwarfs. Okay? Now, a dwarf is a person with a medical condition known as dwarfism. I don't know if this law pertains to homunculus or not, because part of the homunculus lore is that you need to vivisect it or dissect it for magical purposes. So, but there is a law for you can't throw dwarfs around. Okay, this is a real thing.
So, guys, a good segue to homunculi. Do you know the root word of gnome, the word gnome? And remember, these were referred to as gnomes by those people. Gnome. The etymological root of the word gnome, G-N-O, is gnosis, to know. So Gnostic, right? Gnomes are intuitive beings in this sense, right? Gnostic beings that help you, right? Externalized consciousness in this sense. But that doesn't rule out the possibility of small humanoids, which I think it's pretty clear that there were. But with that in mind, that gnome actually means, right, so gnosis comes from the same word as that. You understand the occult connotation of the word. So we just talked about the tower. And now we've just discovered little people with the tower. So when I hear little man and tower, wizard's tower, right, with the signs of the zodiac on it, with a ringing bell tower, with the scenes of Genesis etched onto it, that makes me think of a wizard's tower. And like you said, alchemists have wizards and familiars, or homunculi. So what is a homunculus, Juan?
I want to point out near Lake Wales in Gibsonton, at one time their post office had a counter for dwarfs. Okay, at one point in time.
Could you say that one more time?
In Gibsonton, Florida, which is a town nearish Lake Wales, at one time had the only post office with a counter for dwarfs. I don't know if homunculi are in there, but again, people of short stature. And we're gonna get kind of wild on this episode because we're gonna throw out some crazy ideas out there, but I'm here for it. But a homunculus, again, is a sort of talisman, a meat and bones voodoo doll, if you will, for the practitioner. The original homunculus was the voodoo doll, a simulacra of man, a simulacra of a person. It could be a woman as well. Doesn't have to be just a man. There is such thing as a femunculus, which is a small miniature woman.
Femunculus.
Yeah, femunculus, dude. So the idea is pretty much the alchemical homunculus, which is in the 16th century by Paracelsus, that was popularized, is you can make this little magical man that will lead you to gold. It will tell you things that are hidden. So when you're talking about this gnosis, they know all things hidden. They know they have this sacred knowledge because they come from the art being alchemy. And part of the lure is you can vivisect it, dissect it, use its body for various purposes. So cannibalize it in order to use it for your... Shout out to Peter Shell for the super chat. Love you, bro. Thank you. Yeah, this dude's crazy, bro. Shout out to you, brother. Appreciate you. So you use the homunculus to vivisect it and use it for magical purposes. Now, according to the lore, according to Paracelsus, which this wasn't just some regular Joe Schmo guy. This is a guy who, quite literally, we have a lot of the things that we use in modern day toxicology, he was a surgeon, so modern day surgery. A lot of the things that we use today is because of him. And he was a homunculus. He was 4'11" or something like that. He was very small, deformed. He hated women, and he was the typical mad scientist in a lab. He wanted to be left alone. His clothing would become discolored from being so close to the furnace. But according to Paracelsus, if the practitioner would let his homunculus grow to old age, it would become a mythological creature. It would become either a dwarf or a giant. So we have the homunculus connection with cryptids directly, according to Paracelsian mythology, which is the daddy of the homunculus. You're muted, bro.
Thanks, Peter. I guess that didn't go through, but thanks, Peter. Basically, as we're getting closer to deeper into science, right, in chemistry and alchemy, we just kind of need to take a look, and he tipped for some phonetics, so I'll give you some more phonetics. From the word gnome, Juan, did you know, from the word gnome, we get the word genome.
Genetics.
Genome. And genie comes from the same root word, to know.
Genie. And gin too.
And the gin, the gnome, the gnome, genome is the same root word all over. To know, to know, K-N-O-W. Well, you flip the W to an M, as someone in the chat pointed out. Gnome, right? So these are one interpretation of this to keep in mind the whole way through is these are the little elves inside your head that can bring ideas. And that's what the alchemists are chasing the good ideas at the end of the day. You know?
And it's interesting because I pulled up some history on, we can get into the elementals later, but right, the inhabitants, you have the gnome is an earth elemental. It's very earthy. I play Dungeons and Dragons, so you have, you know, the earth gnomes or dwarf or et cetera, et cetera. You have all these different levels of it. But I found it interesting that I have from this encyclopedia a description of fairies and their lure. And I'm going to leave the first part for later, so we can connect it. But fairies are elusive, and many prefer to keep to themselves. They can make themselves visible to humans if they so desire. They are best seen at twilight. Some fairies are diminutive, even tiny, while others are huge, larger than humans. Some are beautiful and some are ugly. Some resemble humans, while others are spirit-like with wings. William Butler Yeats said of fairies, do not think of the fairies are always little. Everything is capricious about them, even their size. They seem to take what size or shape they please. Now, the guy that built the first home called El Retiro, or the retirement, or what they changed it to Pinewood later, he had 7 sons. Now, when I was looking up this description of fairies, this guy named Robert Kirk, a Scottish Episcopalian minister who lived near
Episcopalian.
Kirk was a 7th son and may have inherited the gifts of second sight, clairvoyance, and healing from his mother. So we are talking about the 7th son of a 7th son. I think I saw somewhere where Crowley was a 7th son, and the lore goes that the 7th son has the most magical powers. You know, they have they're unlocked. They have they're psychic, etc. But this Kirk guy, he wrote about fairies. And according to Kirk, fairies are real and intelligent beings with supernatural powers. And he goes on to talk about the entire lore of fairies. Earth fairies are associated with gardens. So we have the Bach Tower gardens, woodlands, nature, flora, animals. It's a bird sanctuary. Minerals, we have the Iron Mountain, places in nature, mines, caves, and so on. Earth fairies also include those who work in human households. We're talking about a guy who literally, one of the presidents said he shaped architecture. He was one of the most influential architects in the United States, and he coined the term living room, so human households, such as brownies. Dwarfs, gnomes, elves, pixies, trolls, and knockers are earth-oriented fairies. So, and then he said, Kirk said that the fairy realm is the mirror opposite of the human world. Did you know that in Florida, we have the most lakes or ponds named Mirror Lake? We have the most here in this state out of any state.
Yeah. And can I jump in before we move away too far from the Iron Mountain? You just said ruling caves, mountains, mines. Did you know Iron Mountain in 1926, Lord of the Rings had not been written. Okay. Did you know where the dwarves live in Lord of the Rings? Iron Mountains. The Iron Mountains.
Really?
Yes.
What is it? Art imitates life, or life imitates art, one of the two? Where, I mean, how you're saying these. So in psychology, there is something known as the homunculus argument, because you mentioned about the homunculus being part of the psyche. Well, in psychology, there's a thing called the homunculus argument that states that there is a homunculus inside your brain watching your life, and within that homunculus there's another homunculus. So it's homunculus all the way down instead of turtles all the way down. It's homunculus all the way down ad infinitum, and that's an actual thing. It's a narrative fallacy, but you know, because it's a paradox kind of thing. It's like you can't exist forever. But people back then were like, what's in my head? Is there a minute? You know, preformationism is that large things exist in a miniature version. So if I'm a big man, that means in the sperm, before they had microscopes, they believed that it was a little man crunched up like this, and he would just grow into a person. You want me to pull your screen up?
Yeah, please.
There you go.
see that?
Yeah, Iron
Good?
Mountain. Yep.
Okay, Iron Mountain, Florida, and the mineral. Oh shit. Okay, hang on.
And then I pulled up the picture where on
There
the
we go.
Facebook for Bach Tower, they literally have, hey, find the little gnome. And they hide this little gnome apparently where it's like a scavenger hunt. And they hide a little gnome for you to find.
You can see that? My
Yes,
screen?
I can. Yep.
Good. Okay. Iron Mountain, highest points in peninsular Florida, one of the highest. Lake Wales Ridge, right? Keep that in mind. Wales, like Welsh. The mountain contains citronelle, a hematite containing rock that oxidizes when exposed to air, similar to, like iron oxide, right? Like bloodstone. Hematite means bloodstone or blood metal, and is responsible for the red-brown color of the earth. So red, right? There's iron in the blood, of course. So this type of information would not go unnoticed to an alchemist, right?
Yes, good point.
So, in The Lord of the Rings, you have the Iron Mountains where the dwarves lived, rich in iron, right? Like we just saw. Iron oxide, I would guess. The dwarves of Middle Earth, right? And we all know that Tolkien was very in tune. Right.
And he also added on here, it is bad luck to disturb a known fairy dwelling or any place where fairies might live, such as under piles of stone. So mind you, these guys are moving things around and disturbing the earth. So
it might have been a shit ton of blood sacrifice at the top of that hill too, for all we know.
From the previous people, that's why they picked that particular spot, because it was according to lore, it was worshipped by the indigenous people.
I'm not saying it stopped.
And guess who the first Carolyn, I don't know.
Christmas Carol, to sing Carol.
I don't know how you say it, but the first player to play the first, because it's like an instrument at the top on that tower. Guess who referred the first player for that instrument to Bach? Just take a wild guess.
Was it a president?
Rockefeller.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Rockefeller was the one to recommend the first player for the instrument there.
Wow.
Yes. So the ties of this guy go deep. I didn't
know that part, but the architect and landscaper are two different people that worked on the design of the tower. One of them worked for Rockefeller. The other one one of them built a Rockefeller building. The other one built one for the Federal Reserve. Then they would both make the Bach Tower, go on to make the Bach Tower.
And really quickly, this is the family that donated for that archive in the 3rd or 4th floor. And as of 2015, his family was ranked 39th in America's richest families with an estimated net worth of This is 2015. And the family was ranked 4th richest family in Texas. And they, for whatever reason, they donated to have an archive made in one of the rooms there. I don't know. It's probably nothing to see there, right? Just nothing.
We don't want to get on China's bad side.
But check it out, dude. So, no, you want to know what this guy's known for?
What?
Petrochemical and plastics industry. So we're talking about, we have Rockefeller. Rockefeller also had a chemist on payroll. So when I relate all this to alchemy, any transference of energy, any transference of money, where we're talking about some of the richest people in the world for their time, transference of money, the monetary system is an alchemical creation. It's the transference, this transmutation of energy. When I give you something for something in exchange, right, if you watch Full Metal Alchemist, the law of equivalent exchange. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. Was it? And sublimation, right? Generating material wealth out of nothing and vice versa.
which is, yeah, after the golden standard, essentially that's what that was. They were printing. You know, the government doesn't even need your tax dollars; that they can literally print things out of the ether. They just fire the printers up, and here we have it. So again, it's this system that we've been put in that's an illusion, but very interesting ties that this guy had. The Meredith Corporation, a conglomerate, right, for more than 40 million, so a readership of more than 120 million and paid circulation of more than 40 million, and its website had nearly 135 million monthly unique visitors. Its broadcast television stations reached 11% of the U.S. household. So let's just think about this for a second. We're talking about the manipulation of people's reality. This guy has a tower on the highest point, Peninsular Point in Florida. Right, just the highest, a crazy looking tower. Come on, I mean this screams a cult, and it has the biggest library. I mean, if you look at the setup, I pulled it up earlier. It's this dude was probably making homunculus in his spare time, bro.
Well, that's kind of what we're getting close to. Is
And
what is the origin of this thing? If
I want
there's
to add
a little thing there.
I want to add one more thing before we move on, because it's important for people to understand the homunculus concept. It's not only as you can take it from it being a real thing. So you have the story of this lady experiencing a real cryptid, a thing that was there, right? It was menacing them. It was throwing it was a tribe of them that came out. There's also a metaphysical aspect to the homunculus. We're talking about guys that want to find the elixir of life. You have Jeff Bezos, one of the richest or the richest man in the world, looking for the elixir of life. They're transhumanists. They want to live forever. Part of the homunculus lore, there's also the little golden man, which in Taoism, and Chinese internal alchemy, what's the family that donated for the archive? They were Chinese. Well, they're internal alchemists. They believe that by reversing the flow of energy within their body, they would create a little golden man with the sperm that's in the body and the fluids and everything, and that all that fluid and sperm would crystallize. And the purpose that homunculus served for the practitioner, for their creator, was to escape reincarnation. It would run away after he died to exist and keep on existing. Now, that's in the ether, if that's in the world, like a little gnome or something, who knows? In order to escape samsara and not have to reincarnate. Because again, these are guys that are reading about astrology. They know, they have certain beliefs. And some are either trying to escape the cycle, or some know that they can jump right back in at some other time. These are my personal opinions. But again, the homunculus serves two purposes. Not only is it a magical talisman while the practitioner is alive, but after death, it serves as an escape from what I would consider the matrix for the creator. So just something to keep in mind. You're muted, by the way.
Homunculi. Right. One possible explanation for what these little critters are, right, running around the orange grove. But as I wanted to pull up another possible connection, have you guys ever heard of Homo floresiensis?
I have. Is it the...
Hang on, I'm pulling up my screen.
Let me know when you want me to pull it up. Yep.
Yeah. Ready? You see my screen?
Yep.
Alrighty. So, what if Homo floresiensis is Homo floridasiensis? Flores, now look at this. Homo floresiensis, also known as Flores man, nicknamed Hobbit, is an extinct species of small archaic human that inhabited the island of Flores, Indonesia, until the arrival of modern humans about 50,000 years ago, okay, would have stood about 3'7" in height. Okay, Flores, Indonesia. Right. Now, these are from the Philippines. Only years earlier. Right, I think these are possible skeletons. I think these are like semi, artistically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, representations. But they say they're from where you said the Philippines?
The Philippines or Indonesia area.
Interesting.
Indonesia, yeah. So with that, where does that root word come from? Flores.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now,
Flowers.
what if when Juan Ponce de Leon came upon Florida, who was himself 4'11", guys.
Homunculus confirmed.
We're gonna pull some of that stuff up. Juan Ponce de Leon himself was only 4'11", and that seems to be the consensus on the internet. Okay, now when he landed on Florida, what if he was saying land of the Floresiensis, right?
Love it.
Land of the small people, land of the. I would assume that has to do with like floor, like being low to the floor. I don't know, but I hope you see where I'm going with that.
I do, and I believe that Ponce de Leon was some alchemical pun. He wasn't even a real. They don't know when he was even actually born. Okay. I've come across research that states that Crystal Ball Columbus was actually Saint Germain, the immortal alchemist. So back to the homunculus lore.
And he departed from San Germain, Puerto Rico, did he not? When he left for
San Juan. Well, they were in San Juan. His son was the governor of San Juan.
They were in San Juan for sure. Somewhere in that story is a San Germain.
You're blowing my mind, bro. Don't do this to me. Don't do this to me, bro.
I swear. They might have named a nearby city. I'm not sure.
You're blowing my mind. So
that wasn't part of my presentation, but yeah, keep going.
The idea. So back to the homunculus lore. The homunculus help its creator find gold, treasures, reveal. They divinate. They tell him the future. What was Juan Ponce?
Can I share while you say this?
Yeah. What was Juan Ponce de Leon looking for? He was looking for some sort of treasure. He was looking for the fountain of youth, which could be considered, again, something magical. So the idea that they don't know when he was born, he was associated with, and Crystal Ball Columbus was associated with John Dee as well. John Dee, the famous occultist. So the idea that this person in history that they've told us, they don't know when he was born. Like, born in Spain. When was he born? They don't know. What if he was a homunculus for Crystal Ball Columbus? That when they talk about all this in the mainstream, who came? I have this idea that Florida. If you look at Florida and how alchemically charged it is, what do people come here for, bro? They come here to die. It's an alchemical vessel. It's the last frontier for a reason, because people come here to be transmuted to the next level of ascension, to the next step of life, which is death. Now, whatever happens after death, according to whatever what people personally believe, but it's an alchemical vessel, bro. It's the belly of the beast, and once it spits you out, you're done. I mean, people migrate here to retire, and there's nothing after that. And again, we know that the astrological correspondence of Florida, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, Narco, because this is your specialty, Pisces, right? The fish.
Yep.
which I'm not 100%, but I think it's related to portals as well. And that might be Cancer and Capricorn. I think the portals, where they talk about the zodiac being, again, some sort of journey of the soul. Now, Ponce de Leon, Pounce of the Lion. You have the Medici lines. We went to the Whitehall over in Lake Worth, where we have the Flagler mansion with they always have the Medici lines. Mm-hmm. They always do.
And
in St. Augustine, and one of my friends, Slick Dissident, shout out to Gabe from Slick Dissident, he has this system that he uses, and he calls it tarot tories, and he relates a tarot cards to different places in the United States. And of course, Florida corresponds with the death card, because people come here to die. Mm-hmm. And again, a very interesting connection. We also have the connection of, we have Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is probably a homunculus. I mean, look how tall he was. And who else was in there? Oh, we have leads.
Slow down.
Slow down.
Okay,
slow down.
No. Keep going. Just let me share.
Another Edward. How we have, I think we have 11. We have 11 Henrys. We have 2 Edwards so far. So Edward Bach, and we have Edward Leeds Scanlon. I don't even know how to say his last name, but
you said it right.
Coral Castle. And I want to segue right after this into something else, because we're going there, bro. We're going there.
There we go. See that? See my screen?
Yeah.
Not far from where we're talking about, in Clearwater, Florida, not very far at all, Tom Cruise lives. He is perhaps the most famous dwarf in American history.
Dude, is that a real picture? Are those pictures real?
These are 100,000,000,000% real.
There's no way this is real, dude.
I, as a doctor, can verify these medically, anatomically.
The question that people want answered, though, Narco, is: are you a homunculus? Can you tell the listeners? Because I've had people approach me, Narco, and they're like, "Hey, dude, is this guy a homunculus? Is this guy a magical little person?" Can you answer that?
I'm a homunculus. Let's keep talking about what we were talking about.
So, did you pull up a tower of, what was that? Was that he had like a tower?
That was Tom Cruise's penthouse, and his son has like a penthouse right nearby, and basically, they live in the same neighborhood as the Scientology HQ. Scientology actually owns most of Clearwater, Florida, south of Tampa Bay, St. Pete area. So,
since we're there, we're talking about homunculus, where we can get a little bit into Coral Castle and Edwards, the other Edwards mythology or history. Now, one important aspect of fairies, and of course, when I looked up the UFO sightings around Lake Wales, is very high, because fairies also have been compared with sightings of extraterrestrials. Many descriptions of the latter are similar to older descriptions of fairies. UFO researcher Jacques Vallée has made compelling comparisons between ETs and fairies and elves and demons, and emphasizes the similarity between ETs and the fairy faith Celtic folklore. Supporters of this view argue that ETs are a modern way of explaining encounters with certain types of otherworldly beings. Opponents say that the lack of modern fairy traditions, especially in the United States, causes many experiencers to explain beings as ETs instead of fairies. So,
go ahead. No, keep going. Finish.
Because you posted that video the other day of the UFO sighting in Homestead. I had actually sent you that in private, and you went ahead and you posted on your story. But I did see a UFO in Homestead as well. And the reason it was weird, because I always chalk it up, oh, it was just a bird or it was something. But then when you posted that video, I was like, okay, maybe it was an actual UFO, because there was, again, a UFO in Homestead. It's near a military base. So I kind of chalked it up for it to be, but that is near Coral Castle. My house in Homestead is 10 minutes from Coral Castle, and in Coral Castle there is the face of the little extraterrestrial. Now, hear me out, because I'm this is reaching or not, I don't know, but let's just step outside the box. Part of the lure of Edward Leedskalnin is that he had a little box with him.
Can I share my screen as you talk?
Yeah. He had a little box with him as he was creating his castle. Now, that could be, some people say that was like a magnetic contraption that he had, where he was able to use, he said he had figured out how the pyramids were made in Egypt. He said he had figured out the technology. Now, I've been there and I've seen it with my own eyes. And that's Coquina, right? That's Coquina, or is that limestone?
Oh, that's Coquina, baby.
Yeah. So Coquina, which again has organic materials in it. So that's also maybe part of an alchemical process where they're able to do things with it. Who knows? But this guy was very eccentric. He lived in a tower. I don't know if you have pictures of it. He lived in a tower as well on his property.
I don't have a good shot of it here.
Either way, I have pictures I can pull up. He did have a tower as well. And he had a castle, Coral Castle. So I believe that these guys were tapping into lost tech, or maybe they themselves were the talismans. I mean, I would go as far as to say that. I'm not saying that every short person is a homunculus, but if it's the lure, if it's the traditional, if you look in Homestead, there's a lot of UFO sightings in Homestead. And there's this, we talked about the gnomes in Lake Wales. If you look in Lake Wales, I mean, as recently as last year, I have been pulled up here somewhere, there have been UFO sightings. So
yeah, now you want a linguistic, people got to get their head out of this alien stuff. If you can clear it all up linguistically, what's alien? Alien is Aryan. That's what they won't tell you on History Channel. That's what they won't tell you on Discovery Channel. Anywhere you see the word ancient alien, you can replace it with the word ancient Aryan. And boom, now you have the truth, the illegal truth. Where does the word pixie come from? From the Picts. From the Picts of northern Britain, the Celts, right? Where does fairy come from? The fair-haired people of the northern British Isles.
Still gonna pull it
up. The north. Where does elf come from? From the elves, the elvins. Elvin are the Finns. Northern people, right? Whiteheads, white-haired people. So that's all etymological, stuff. But
no, I get you, bro. It's all. I mean, if space is fake and gay, then there wouldn't be any aliens. But again, I think, dude, 100% that they might be. Whatever we're seeing, I think Carl Jung talked about it.
Sorry to cut you off. Why I was going there, I forgot why I was going there. It was the Irish man who was able to help this family. It was the Irish guy.
I see where you're going.
That knew the leprechaun secrets, the secrets of the pixies, the fairies, because those are predominantly Irish myths, northern British, Celtic, Germanic folklore, and we have a lot of that stuff. And where was this story going down after all? It was Lake Wales, right? Wales. Well, Wales. Celtic people live in Wales. They used to, right? Celtic, Druidic. But yeah, sorry to cut you off. Where were you going?
No, you're good. So I wanted to jump back to the Bach Tower, the gardens, because the guy that lived there first, Charles Austin Buck Sr., he was an executive for Bethlehem Steel Corporation, and it was one of the world's largest steel producing and shipbuilding companies. And when he died, I found this kind of interesting, that he was he was buried in Holy Savior Cemetery in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. So again, I just found that kind of weird. And again, these guys were rolling with people who I believe that they were aware of the occult. They were aware of things that the normal layman people wouldn't be aware of. And I don't know if you want to talk about the ladies' home journal a little bit. Did you pull anything up from those? You're muted. Hold on. Let me unmute you. There you go.
I made a connection in another video where the Ladies' Home Journal, which is this famous publication that Edward Bach was, right, you know, the mastermind of, the editor-in-chief or whatever. And basically, what was that all about? Was it really just for housewives sitting in their suburban homes, you know? And is that what made him the, you know, an influential man in American history? Well, I told the story about Che Guevara during the Cuban Revolution when they were trying to disseminate communist propaganda, intel, you know, codes and stuff through the radio. Well, what they were doing so that the government wouldn't catch on to them is they started a, it was called Advice for Women, I think. Advice for Women in Spanish, right? Or something like that. Whatever the Cuban phrase for that would be. And basically they were disseminating communist instructions, guerrilla tactics and such through this woman's radio show. And it was all code going through this, like, they would talk about, you know, curtains and carpet.
Very alchemical.
And exactly. And they were using code words through the whole process, so that the man who was listening to the show, that his wife, if the cops busted down the door, the wife was just ironing, you know, clothes, listening to her women's radio show. Because, you know, in those times, radios were probably under a lot of restrictions and stuff like that. But that's just what I think of when I think of this Ladies' Home Journal, because William Randolph Hearst owned the Ladies' Home Journal, or at least part of it. And he was definitely what you'd call a propagandist, right? Very anti-weed, pro-war, stuff like that. He needs a whole another episode on his own. But he was the owner of this publication, and Edward Bach was the editor.
Interesting.
You got anything you want to jump in on?
Yeah, I'm just reading here through the elements and their inhabitants. Manly P. Hall wrote about it, and you know, the spiritual world. But you're really piquing my interest with this whole thing, and I've flipped through some of it. But again, if you don't have the key to unlock the text, you're never gonna know what's behind that, and we don't know for how long he was even throwing things in there. We know that, right, the Shakespearean codes or the Baconian, whichever ones you want to talk about, where they would use all of Shakespeare, even if he was a real person or not, would use his plays to send out messages. But what people have to understand, it's not messages for you. It's for the initiated. It's for the people who understand where to look, how to look, and when to look. And that's a nod to them over there on the other side. Whatever secret society, I don't know if you want to pull up the building pictures of this place. And I want to pull up the picture of there was some really good pictures of the founder's room, right? Why is it a founder's room? There's only one guy that, I mean, obviously he had people, but again, it gives me very secret society, Freemasonic vibes. And if you think about, right, let's talk about maybe the Mithraic mysteries, where they would go off into caves and they would do things occulted. Well, what a better place than at the top of a mountain inside your tower, locked up, occulted from the rest of the world to see. You know, you look at the Bohemian Grove. The Bohemian Grove is the same thing. A bunch of dudes running around naked in the forest, doing whatever they do, doing burning effigies and doing all these other things. Well, maybe Bach and his friends were getting together in this tower and making homunculus with one another. Just the one big homunculi party. And they were just doing what alchemists do. I'm going to pull up these pictures here of the construction. I don't know if you want to go over those because you brought up some good points that...
Doing what alchemists do.
Doing what alchemists do, bro.
Hey, what two alchemists do in the privacy of the marriage bed is none of my business. Frankly.
Whatever you insert in yourself, Dr. Longo, is your business, good sir. I will not judge you for it. You're still my boy. So just putting that out there, dude. All right. So here we have, I don't know if you've seen these pictures, bro. This picture from 1992. And nice. It's just pictures of the garden. And then you have a nice picture here of the door. It's not color, but still nice nonetheless. And again, this is supposed to be the story of creation. Well, if you look at this, it kind of looks like a homunculus to me, bro. I don't know. It's just like a little seed there, and just it's growing. It gets bigger in this picture. I don't know. I'm just saying this kind of reminds me of the mandroga plant, where it's like a little person, right? It's growing. So, bro, I don't know, man. This is supposed to be the story of Genesis. I mean, if you really dig into if you dig into other stories of creation, man is a homunculus. And the Anunnaki, they used the matrix of one of the Anunnaki women, the sperm of a Homo sapien or Homo race, Homo species.
Let's think about where it's segueing, right, or where it's intersecting right here. Genetics, gnomes. The genome, right? The gnome is the genome. Okay. That may even be telling you that, of course, there used to be giants and gnomes, right? Genomes. And perhaps all of them were the result of genetic manipulation. GM, right? Genetic manipulation, genetic modification. We very well may have been the result of genetic manipulation in whatever form you might think. But, let's keep wondering, what else could this thing have been?
And
these little things.
Notice it's a brass door. It's not a gold door.
Okay. Now, brass and bronze. There's a lot of brass and bronze in this. Now, Edward Bach was a Libra. Libra is ruled by copper, or Venus is ruled by copper Venus rules copper. Venus rules Libra. Now, Libra, being the second sign that copper rules, would also rule bronze and brass. And this tower has a lot of bronze and brass.
Interesting. To maybe augment your abilities in some which way, because I like what you talk about when you start talking about the using your astrological sign to manipulate your character. So we have, was it Dali with his little horns, and he was a Taurus, so he's putting that energy out there to, again, that to me is sympathetic magic. That to me is real magic, when you're able to affect people without having to do anything other than using imagery.
Just harmony, too. Harmony,
So I just found it interesting because it's brass and not gold, because I'm sure this guy had enough money to make a gold door. Can I share
something? And I've got another take on that, too. A lot of times these rich people will have stuff on display, and they'll... Hang on. There we go.
Somebody said Dali was an evil Taurus. You think he was evil, bro?
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
God damn it.
Oh, wait. It just fell. Yeah, it just fell.
There we go. Okay. So, Libra. Did you know Libra is actually the zodiac sign that you could call Lucifer? Libra is Lucifer, the morning star, the evening star. Okay.
Mm.
Libra astrologically is also represented a lot either by the serpent or the dove, right? And Crowley tells you that. I think Crowley was a Libra, if I'm not mistaken. And he tells you one of his most famous quotes, there is love and there is love. There is the serpent and there is the dove. Because think about it. Genesis starts out with a serpent and ends with a dove. Or not ends, but the story of Adam and Eve in the garden that
He was
leads the
born
fall of man, the flood, ends with the dove.
12th of October.
Yep, so he was a Libra. Aleister Crowley was a Libra. Pink, the color pink is ruled by Libra. So created, now look at these keywords. This is from the Bach Tower website. Look at these keywords found in here. Thinking Libra rules equilibrium, a library, as you were just saying, Juan. A library comes from the word Libra, libro, libre, to balance. So to create perfect unity in symbolism in the design of the tower. Blah, 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 blah. Few other forms of wildlife depicted. Adam and Eve and the serpent. Libra is the serpent. It's ruled by Venus. Eve is Venus. Okay, it's opposite Aries, which is ruled by Adam. Adam is Aries, right? Now, look at this next sentence. The colorful tiles found only in the top third of the tower were designed by blah, 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 depicting the perfect balance in nature, species, and gender. Balance. That is Libra. Libra's
That's the scales, right?
I balance. Yes. The great brass door. Okay, brass, as I pointed out, ruled by Libra.
And now, wrought iron gates.
Bronze rod supported by a bronze snake on the gnomen. The gnomen. Now, the gnomen, we were looking at the sundial earlier. The gnomen, spelt the same way as gnome, is the piece of a sundial that indicates, is the little needle, right? I believe the gnomen, the gnomen. So, gnomen, you know, that's just such a clue right there that this guy on his tower has a little sundial with a gnomen on it, a gnomen. And then after his death, they end up finding gnomes all over his property, essentially.
Yeah, very interesting. I love that, dude. And we can't say that he wasn't aware because literally he has astrological signs around the sundial. So it wasn't like it was like Henry Flagler and his hotel where he has the zodiac, right, in the glass and up in the ceiling. So these guys they knew about that. They know about this. And here we go. This is what I wanted to get to because you have, right, when it comes to the old world architecture, a lot of the things that we always refer to, oh, there's no building pictures. We don't have the pictures of when they were building. Well, I was like, gotcha, bitch. When I saw this, I was like, we got the building pictures, right? We have the shell of it. And then you're like, no, dude, this is something else, brother. I'm like, okay.
Exactly.
So, this is from 1927, bro. July 5th, 1927.
See, now I've never tried to say that this was a Tartarian structure because, 28, 27 is pretty late for the quote-unquote Tartarian range. It's very late. The reset, the last reset, architectural reset on that scale would be World War One. Maybe World War II. Very hard to get away with unseen buildings in the 30s and 40s. World War One seemed to be the crux of the whole thing. But as we see these construction photos, especially the ones if you see where they just started out, where the sort of posts or pylons or the big metal frame is closer to the ground, they just started out. There's bricks all over the ground scattered. Now, I don't know if that's common procedure for a new fancy tower to start out with just scattering all of your new one of a kind, I assume. You're not going down to the Home Depot and just picking up these blocks by the dozen. These are ordered probably by the number, fit to a certain piece each, right? And these had to be arranged after being delivered. And you're telling me that they're just going to scatter them about like rubble while because if you can see, they start out. Do you have the picture where the towers less started?
No, this is, let me check here. I have these. These are really great, actually.
Well, that's towards the end of construction.
Yeah, this is towards the end. I don't have anything else, bro. What it would.
Here, let me see. I have one. Yeah.
All right, let me see here because I'm trying to. I read somewhere. Okay, so the Gothic Revival Tower was built at the highest elevation on the site, south of the reflecting pool that reflects its full image. And I think that's very important too, right? There again, mirror magic is important to these people, and so they made sure it reflects fully on the moat. So the tower is 51 feet square at its base, changing at the height of 150 feet to an octagon, with each of the 8 sides 37 feet wide. So I've talked about the Pythagorean palaces where these guys build buildings adhering to certain measurements to invoke another dimension within these buildings. So a higher state of consciousness within these buildings. If you tie that in with the bells and the resonance of the bells and how that alters people's perceptions, there, bada bing, bada boom, you have the perfect alchemical vessel for some dude to sit in there and just meditate and do what he does with his alchemical buddies and make homunculus all night long. But I want to talk about how, all right, so it is built of pink Etoile marble and gray Creole marble mined in Tate, Georgia, and Coquina stone from St. Augustine, Florida. So I just want to throw that out there, dude.
Yeah, Coquina and Tate, Georgia. Well, you have a Georgia in Russia, and you have a Tataria in Russia as well, don't you?
Are you gonna pull something? You want me to pull you up on the screen there?
Hang on.
Very interesting etymological connections there, Doctor. We have a special guest joining us. Let me know when you want me to bring him in. Our resident homunculus is going to be joining us right now. So here he is. What's up, dude?
Hey, resident homunculus, huh?
Ben, what's up?
Yes.
Everyone say hi to Ben.
So far. Killing
nice.
it. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you loud and clear.
A tiny bit hot. Can you just turn it down just a tiny bit?
Better? Worse?
Yeah, you're good. You're good. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. All right. So,
you were sending me some interesting stuff. I told you I was prepping for this presentation. We just went through some firsthand accounts, or I guess secondhand account on our end. This is all just kind of anecdotal, but as far as hardcore proof of small people in the southeastern United States, as far as in the Americas, South Central America, right? Small people. Is there any more sort of straightforward evidence, or at least, what were you showing me earlier today? Basically, is what I'm getting at.
You're asking me?
Yeah.
The usual. People don't get sick of newspaper articles, but yeah.
No, they're very interesting. Very, very.
They love you, bro.
The whole world. I mean, this wasn't like a fable 200 years ago or less.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like just the Nordic people or the Irish. And it wasn't like a myth.
True.
It was everywhere. And we bring up Lord of the Rings a lot. And yeah, we have mounds in America where they had giants and dwarfs in the same mound. And so you had these, just like Lord of the Rings again, you had all these different phenotypes living together. And I've hypothesized for a long time, and we just kind of started talking about this recently. But, when you read Marco Polo and his adventures in Cathay, it's crazy. Outside the city, outside the white city of Kublai Khan, there was unicorns and hobgoblins and dwarfs and giants and cyclopses. And
even in the word right there, Kublai Khan, Guble, it's the same etymological Kabbalistic root as goblin, Kublai.
Yeah.
Right.
And Kublai, as I've shown you, that really old Hebraic dictionary called the Obri Dictionary. For those of you who want to look at it yourself, you can just search the Obri Dictionary, OBRI, OBRY sometimes, but usually OBRI. And Kublai just means Kabbalist. And like wizard, basically, is exactly what they're saying. So, and Khan means king. Sometimes it means priest, but, in this time period, priest and king was the same thing. The lead magician was your leader, and yeah. I think I sent you the one about Chicago, right? Being the white city.
And can I add real quick? I did an interview on a professor that teaches architecture, and he wrote the book Architect as Magician. And in a lot of these cultures, the architect was the magician. When a magician sketches up a drawing for a building, that's his wand. He's writing. And then when you mix in, you're talking about newspaper articles. Well, what a better medium than these are the mediums that were presented to people in front of them. I mean, these were the people's grimoires essentially. And back, an architect when they write and they draw this building, you don't know what intention they're putting into it as they're writing it or what they're writing with, right? Are they using some sort of mixture with the ink? And it gets very alchemical back again to alchemy, but very interesting. And I just want to point that out there that literally the architects back then were magicians, and they considered them to be using divination, because when you built a tower like this, you needed to understand what was going to happen 100 years from now. That foundation, was it going to hold, yes or no? So you're using divination to look into the future to know if it's going to still be standing 100 years from now. All these star forts and all these things, well, they had to know, like, hey, 200 years from now, it's probably still going to be standing or whatever it was.
Yeah. Everything was multi-purposed. And that was kind of something that's really important about the reflecting pool idea when you're dealing with magic. As above, so below. And you're expressing the inward and the outward at the same time. That's the concept of the reflecting pool. And that's probably, I also really kind of saw that when you share the picture of Bach by the water.
Mm-hmm.
The magician and the mirror go hand in hand.
Yes.
And it's the same concept as you were kind of getting to with the familiar and the homunculus. The homunculus is a living representation of your dualistic nature in living form. I mean, obviously it's more complicated than that, but yeah, when you're dealing with magic, and I think the Bach Tower, it's on Iron Mountain. There's a lot of mountains all over America, especially in the 1800s, that they called Iron Mountain, and they were all man-made and they were all magnetic. And this kind of goes back to the Q, the letter Q, and what you were talking about with the homunculus and sperm. What is sperm? It's the cum, it's the compass. It's the letter Q, it's the sperm entering the egg.
Cum, P, ass. Yeah. Magic and midget, same root word, all just about.
It's amazing how all intertwined it all is. That's how magic works. And understanding, it's like magic again is alchemy, which is speech, spelling, grimoires. And yeah, the architect, look at the word architect. Who's the god of the arch? It's Janus. What's the symbol for Janus? It's the monad. It's the sundial. It's the standing stone. Time. You could go on and on. Doorways. gateways, thresholds, Jesus. It's pretty crazy. Hero with 1,000 faces, essentially. Some people will look at it as a hero, but it's the same temporal concept too. And the reflecting pool was the same idea as well. The bridge, as above, so below.
They called it the Taj Mahal of America. That's what Edward Bach called it. He called his own creation, allegedly, the Taj Mahal of America. Well, the Taj Mahal has a long reflective pool in front of it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a quote unquote, the mausoleum concept again, but the Tartar origin, shout out Taj Mahal, Tartar origin of the Taj Mahal. But yeah, the reflecting pool is super important. I mean, DC, Washington, DC, everyone wants to think that DC is evil. And you look into Benjamin Banneker, and that history's been altered drastically. And we've talked a little bit about the cypress swamp and the energy, and the DC is an overlay of the ovum, and it's just like Florida,
Can I ask real quick if this has any other meaning to it? Because there is so these are the bells being delivered. 4 largest bells for the singing tower arriving in Lake Wales, Florida. And, the whole thing behind the bells and how.
Have you heard have they rung the bells?
Yeah, so they do.
I've heard them, yeah.
Twice a day at 1 and 3 p.m. I think it was. And
Do you think all the bells ring?
I mean, if it.
Do you think they're taking the bells away? Because now, you've mentioned the building that the people could have. The Flagler gave, right? What was the stipulation? They couldn't put a bell in the tower, right?
Interesting.
And bells open doorways in magic.
Yes,
that's pretty well known. So yeah, and again, going with what you're saying about the energy and the architecture, and you have a building designed for a specific thing, the bell can be the key that opens the door. And that's why, when you break ground and, the keystone or the cornerstone of a building, and all these things are vastly important. And Mason, that's part of what the Mason keeps secret. And funny, the neighborhood I was raised in was called Keystone, and the road was Brickstone. It's an odd, weird, funny connection. But yeah.
I wanted to ask you guys about this. I don't know how to say it. Exedra, I think it is. They built this for him after he had died in tribute to Bach, I believe. And I don't know if this had any sort of connection with the occult or not. Or
it does. No, I think there's like a little maze, just like a small, short little maze in that little area, a little labyrinth, right? But there's also like a little altar. It looks like a little fountain, but it also looks like the whole area. This is a stretch, and I'm not saying it's been used for this or used for this currently. Like a blood altar. Like there's a part where it has a little drip, like a ridge. So, yeah, exactly. Like a nozzle in the stone. And it might be dripping water, but the way that it's ridged looks kind of like how in horror movies when they have like the ancient temple that the stone, the blood trickles down and fills the channels in the stone. When I was there, it looked like that. Now,
the labyrinth is an important alchemical symbol, and it has a lot to do with the homunculus. To the alchemist, the labyrinth was, what this whole journey was about, this physical incarnation, remembering. And I have heard it postulated that the homunculus was a way of defeating reincarnation, but the labyrinth is that symbol, defeating reincarnation, essentially beating the game, so you have to come back.
Here's the founder's room too. Look at this fireplace.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that this isn't older. my intuition tells me it is. And you look at the size of the furniture, it's just everything seems wrong about it, but who knows?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then here we have the inside of the door. He's literally buried right outside of this door, right in front of the reflection pool. So almost like how you mentioned earlier, I didn't think about that, how the magical mirror, you have John Dee, one of the most famous occultists, using the mirror with Edward Kelly for scrying into other dimensions and interacting with other entities on the other side. Well, this dude is literally in front of right outside this door is the moat, and there's a reflection of the tower in it, and he's literally in front of there.
Yeah, and where did John Dee get his mirror?
Allegedly from the Aztecs.
Right.
So that's according to the lore.
Yeah.
And then is this would you say this is like Pisces, right? Is that the two fish?
It is. Oh, definitely Pisces.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I bet even though his grave is right out front, he's buried below the tower.
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
Without a
exactly. So right here, so you see this, the reflection of the tower. It wasn't even done here, but again, how you're saying this reflection pool, and he's buried right in front of there.
So we can talk just real quick. Pisces, fish, finance. I forgot why I was saying that.
You wanted to talk real quick.
But I wanted to touch on. Well, I want you to show your articles, Ben, the ones you send me, if you could.
Want to pull up your screen, Analog?
Not right now. Let me get him ready. But what was I going to say? Oh yeah, like semen, right? We were just talking about common compass and semen.
The original guy was a shipbuilder too. The guy that built the first house on the.
You know what I mean? Come on.
Oh, I said koi fish. Sorry, finance. Pisces represents finance. So having koi fish is a status symbol astrologically as well, because you're getting kind of the most expensive fish you can, putting it in. It's a symbol of financial dominance.
Yeah, I got it.
But yeah, keep going.
No, I just again, these are just. I just want to go through these pictures real quick before just taking them off.
Let's go through them.
But we already finished them. I think we did all of them. You have the one where the blocks are on the ground, maybe perhaps hinting at that they deconstructed something, put it on the ground, they built their own thing with using the same materials, which that's also another theory, a very, very interesting theory.
Very odd that they're not even done with the tower and they've got all the bricks. They're not even done with the framework and they've got the bricks just sitting there,
Yeah, that looks suspicious. The very early pictures of a lot of places in America, like the Salt Lake City LDS temples, there's just humongous stones tossed. Not like they came in on a cart and they took them off the cart. It's like they just pushed them off the cart. It's like that alone doesn't make any sense. The labor to unload all these things, like it wouldn't make any sense. You'd keep everything organized. And like you said, everything's cut to a specific, how stupid would it be to spend all this labor to have the stones break on each other?
Do they have cranes back? How are they?
Oh yeah. Those pieces you see sticking out, those spiky looking parts.
Oh, okay. It's like for pulleys.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
And then you see the level, the decking there, the little midway up. That's where they would stand, and that would slowly rise as they built the layers. Kind of how they do it today, but smaller scale.
Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, again, archetypal wizard with this tower, alchemist, cave, etc., etc. It is in the middle of what would have been remote, an area where it was in the middle of nowhere. Essentially, Lake Wales is still pretty remote. Given where I'm at, I'm in Central Florida. This is pretty remote, but I mean, at this time in the 1920s, there was literally nobody out there. So they would have had more view of the stars as well, using this as some sort of platform. I know you and I, we talked about the ziggurats and the holy mountain symbolism on the episode that we had done, the episode that we did. And this is also, again, another representation of that. of getting closer to the stars to be able to read them more efficiently and unobscured by the trees and all these things. So again, very, very interesting piece of architecture, and especially in Florida. So, and interesting characters tied to it.
Yeah, and you know, we talked a lot about Lord of the Rings. No magician would want a tower like that. A lot of old literature talks about the Tartar priests would manipulate weather, and they'd always go to high ground, where they choose some potent position, which I think is related to iron and magnetism. And that's how they would do it. It's kind of like what we talked about with the pagodas. And they built pagodas, and they put all these different crystals and pearls in them. And the pagodas would bring them good luck. And, you know, the concept of feng shui comes from these concepts. And they would create positive weather and steer away storms, stuff like that. So, yeah, living architecture. It's all related for sure.
Yeah, and I mean the idea of using them, how you're saying, some sort of living architecture, a cult, or even, I mean, if you look at, what is it, the whole Frankenstein, back to the homunculus, the whole Frankenstein lore where they use lightning. Well, if you build a tower, you can harness the power of the lightning better for your alchemical purposes to animate or do whatever with your bodily fluids.
They were using radium in the late 1800s to reanimate people and mummies.
Really?
Yeah, and lightning is really important because you need a high electrical charge to stimulate. They were doing these things with lodestones, and they found that the lodestones had forms of consciousness. And, you know,
and it's raw. Radium is raw too.
88. Time travel, Janice.
Oh,
yeah, it's the doorway.
That's why it's Back to the Future 88 miles an hour, Manly P. Halls, 88 MPHs.
And what happens when they jump time, you know? Single Pine Mall becomes Twin Pine Mall, and you have the 11 9s and the 911s being mirrored in that movie. I've done a little breakdown of the first Back to the Future. And these are the same overlapping ideas that kind of start to become part of what the Philadelphia experiment was symbolic of. Opening doorways, timelines.
And it plays right into the lore of that Iron Mountain, where they believed it was struck by some meteorite and it was magnetized. And according to the lore, they worshipped this mountain. They literally worshipped it. So what a better place than to, hey, let's build a tower right on top of it. You have the Mithraic temples, and then the churches build right on top of those. And they build the church right on top of the Mithraic temples. Because they understand this. They understand, I believe it's the manipulation of realities, of energy.
Well, and the fairy circle was a magnetic ring. Was a lodestone ring.
A what?
Fairy circle?
Oh, fairy circle. Okay. Yes.
And this tied in with me and Longo have talked about mesmerism and hypnotism and magnetism. And that magnets can cause mesmerism or kind of hypnotism of people. And they'll pace. There's kind of this popular video series going around on the internet right now about all these animals walking in circles.
Yes.
You've seen all that. That's the same concept. It's Mecca, right? You've seen how everyone walks counterclockwise or clockwise, sorry, at Mecca.
Yeah.
Mech means to whirl in Greek. Yeah. Everything for me goes to the lodestone. All religions are based on lodestones and deities that live within them.
Check this video out. This video tripped me out the other day. My friend showed it to me. I don't know if you guys have seen it or not. But it's a bunch of ants with the phone in the center. And as soon as they call the phone, check out what the ants do. As soon as they called it, the ants started moving around in a circle around the phone.
It's real, you know. The obsidian scrying mirror
So literally, you have
had
a
magnetic. I mean, that's what you're dealing with there.
yikes.
You're holding a magnet that's charged with energy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think, what is a phone anyway? You know, the ether and all of these things, words, spelling, and grammar. It's all the same fabric. Yeah. And the phone is an interesting thing. You know, they essentially got everyone carrying around a scrithing mirror.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just because it's not on doesn't mean it's not working, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, exactly. I think I'm in the realm of that they're still using, you know, the same tech that we're using today. It's the equivalent of magic back then. They just changed the name. They just call it technology or science or quantum physics, but it's all the same thing. It's the spooky action at a distance. And trust the science, trust the seance, right? I mean,
Perfect.
essentially
Yeah.
the same thing, dude.
Yeah. The early, I can't remember the man's name, but one of the very pioneers of nanotech, he worked for Bell Labs. Bell Labs was kind of setting the pace. Lucis Trust was tied in with Bell Labs. That's another rabbit hole for another day. But I remember reading an article, an interview, and he said that he was inspired. Nanotechnology, the inspiration from it came from Kublai Khan, which we've covered what Kublai Khan was, and his circuit cities. And so kind of bringing full spectrum what you're saying about not just buildings being living things, but these circuit cities look like motherboards. Oh, tons of them, especially in China. But yeah, and then what do you got to do to power them? You got to get people to move off the farms and into the cities. We talked a little bit a lot about this long ago, how important that is, because we're all batteries.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you get the water flowing, you channel all the water, right? Not only is that dissipating heat, but it's bringing current. And then you get the people to start getting the thing off the ground. Yeah, it's egregores and the homunculi stuff tie into each other big time.
And right next to the Bach Tower is something called Spook Hill. It's a local legend, which I forgot to bring that up because it's tied into the indigenous beliefs. And allegedly, so ages ago in an Indian town on Lake Wales, Lake was plagued with raids by a huge gator. So you got the dragon there. The town's great warrior chief, the gator, were killed in a final battle that created the huge swampy depression nearby. The chief was buried on the north side later. Pioneer haulers coming from the old ridge above found their horses laboring here at the foot of the ridge, and it's called Spook Hill. So you stop the car on the white line, and allegedly it rolls uphill. So you have this hill, and it rolls up the hill instead of down it, and it's like, again, it's an optical illusion, they say, but it's a local legend to where you stop your car here, put it in neutral, and it'll start rolling up the hill instead of coming down. And I've read about, there's various places like this around the United States. I mean, this isn't the only place. There's places where they say you put baby powder on the back of the bumper and you have handprints right after, you were being pushed by the ghosts of the children or something like that.
They say baby prints, right? Children's handprints. Well, what if they're gnome handprints?
Homunculus confirmed, bro.
Mm-hmm. So
100%.
Ben, you want to get into those articles?
Sure. Yeah, I got a few of them ready.
The ones you sent me earlier.
Yeah.
I think that can help paint a picture for people that this is not a fantasy story. This is not one person's fever dream. This was an established population in the Americas.
Real quick, Spook Hill Elementary School, their mascot is Casper the Ghost. They are next to Lake Wales. So I just thought that was funny.
I have these old manuscripts from Peru, and they show priests performing these ceremonies on top of these big pyramids made of human skulls. And the priests have homunculuses on their shoulders. I wish I had the picture ready. I looked for them, but I couldn't find them. I can find them, but it's just going to take a little while. And they have these things that look just like those ghosts that they worship. It's really interesting. So the ghost symbol there, the little white ghost, the Casper, that is
typical.
That's something really deep there. And hopefully I can find this book and we can talk about it a little bit later. But yeah, that symbol is really important. Someone just sent me the World Cup. The World Cup, I think, is using that symbol. If you want to try and look that up real quick. I think it was like a commercial where they had Casper flying around.
They're using something
what the
weird.
Hell. Really interesting.
Like a Mobius strip or something. Here, I'll pull it up real quick.
Yeah, I saw the Mobius strip thing, which is just the infinity symbol again, which is, when you look at phonetics in Phoenician, you can see where that comes from.
So it's not that you're talking about. It kind of looks like an Ouroboros too.
No,
if you look at it.
No, it looks like Casper. Looks like that thing exactly.
Interesting.
I wish I had it was a commercial.
Mm.
And it wasn't another language, but anyways, we can talk about the art. I have a whole bunch of them here, and I sent you a few that I haven't ever published. But yeah, we can just talk about this one's really interesting. This is in Tennessee. An ancient graveyard of vast proportions has been found in Coffee County. It's similar to those found in White County and other places in Tennessee. So similar. This is just one, but vastly more extensive.
Now we're talking.
And it shows that a race of pygmies who once inhabited this country were very numerous. The same peculiarities of position observed in the White County graves are found in these. The writer of the letter says, some considerable excitement and curiosity took place a few days since near Hillsborough, Coffee County on James Brown's farm, a man was plowing in a field which has been cultivated many years, plowing up a man's skull and other bones. After making further examination, they found that there were about 6 acres in the graveyard. They were buried in a sitting position or standing. Their bones show that they were a dwarf race of people about 3 feet high. It is estimated that there were about 75,000 to 100,000 buried there. And the position is really important, the seated position. Because you find that a lot with this time frame. We're talking a lot about seated. Mummies were like that. People in the mounds were like that. But yeah, wow, right? 100,000, 75,000, that's crazy. Even 6 acres.
Yeah, wow.
My little farm was 5 acres, and even if I had people buried right next to each other, that's a lot of people. That's pretty insane. So makes you wonder. Tennessee is an amazing place. I got hundreds of articles on Tennessee, giants, cyclopses, humans with horns growing out of their skulls, petrified giants. Yeah, the Nile River is an amazing place. All kinds of crazy stuff. A prehistoric cemetery, Nebraska. The remains. Is this one in Nebraska? No, I don't think so. Workmen tracing King Hill, Missouri, an old landmark of northwestern Missouri, which is to be converted into a residence suburb of St. Joseph, have unearthed a prehistoric cemetery. The remains of a race of dwarfs not allied with any tribe known to have inhabited this territory, and unaccounted for by Indian legendary, repose on the summit of King Hill. So interesting that it's called King Hill. We talked just like the Iron Mountain. These mounds and hills were sacred and often were man-made, and often, a tower or a stone or a tree, some kind of effigy was placed on the top. A feature remarkable in itself and especially marked in connection with the dwarfish remnants of prehistoric man found in this summit is the discovery of human bones, evidently those of a giant, probably more than 7 feet tall and big boned. Low flat heads. The low flat head thing is very interesting. You find a lot of these giants in these mountains have low flat heads with small intelligence and marked animal propensities characterized this people. Heavy jaws and strong, well-preserved teeth carry the records of their lives forward. Brutes, human but inhumane. Self-reliant they are, savages of a lower order than any we know today. Yet they honored their dead. Shells such as are found on the banks of many inland streams, plentiful on the sandbars of Missouri, overlooked by King Hill, and the stones of unusual hues, worthless in the commercial market today. The playthings of children were deposited in the graves. So you got giants and dwarfs. Same area. And that's not the only one. I have a lot of mounds where where you have giants and dwarfs living together. But yeah.
I think that these stories that our imaginations come up with, right? Quote unquote come up with. I think that they come from a place of reality. I think that fiction, by it being limitless, I think I'm on this whole thing with fiction and reality and how they blend the two together. But when you have reality, you're put in a cube, right? And you're in a box. That's why they tell us to think outside the box sometimes. Where, again, I think that these stories have a reality somewhere. I mean, even if it's deep down in our subconscious, we're being talked to from, our ancestors, right? The Akashic records, the DNA, all this is stored in our DNA. And I think by it, we're seeing the evidence here. I mean, this is evidence that there was, a Hobbit race or a Lord of the Rings world, a Skyrim world or a World of Warcraft, whatever it is, these worlds that they create, even Star Wars. I mean, look at that, the symbology with behind Star Wars. I think that all this could have 100% been real, dude. I mean, I don't doubt it one bit.
Yeah, neither do I. You read, and obviously, my interest led me to find a lot of this. So I kind of, it can be a slippery slope with, creating your own reality and ideas like that, pareidolia and so forth. But, thousands and thousands of these now, it gets pretty hard to disregard, because the way people wrote in the 1800s was very different than today. They're not they're not really providing the living for themselves, and there's no like real hierarchical system. You're not wagging the dog to keep your job. And anyways, it's pretty crazy. But yeah, I'll move on to the next one here.
Yeah, and I just did a breakdown of Star Wars and like the Ewoks and the Wookiee and all these things where it's like, what was George Ophiuchus, as my friend Gabe calls him, what were they trying to put out there in the psyche of humanity? I mean, we're talking about imprinting things into the subconscious with language, with symbols, with art. And I mean, Star Wars, name a more iconic series of movies and it's not because they were crazy good for their time. I mean, for their time maybe, but everybody was either emulating, and they still are emulating that world. They're making microcosms. If you look at Disney, I think it's in Disney World, they have like a small little Star Wars lit land. I mean, that's the micro, right? That's the microcosm. That's the simulacrum. That's the homunculus. That's the representation of this other realm that exists in, where does it exist? Does it really exist somewhere in another dimension? Or, I love all that type of talk and thinking about things outside the realm of existence or reality, whatever reality is, because I mean, that's subjective.
Yeah, I mean, Walt didn't choose Florida by accident.
Exactly.
So I agree with you completely. Yeah, and what's his name of the director of Star Wars?
George Lucas.
Big, he was a diehard Joseph Campbell fan.
Yes,
and
exactly.
I went through my Joseph Campbell phase after reading those books. How could you ever watch another movie the same again? You can't. I mean, it's just archetypal. All the greatest movies they do the best because they speak to enough subconscious minds to to echo. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's all about the mirror again.
Yeah, exactly. And
It's multi-layered, like you were saying. It's a mirror, not just physically as a TV screen is physically a mirror.
mhm.
When there's nothing on it, it reflects what's. But that's the thing. And movies are reflective of your subconscious.
Mhm.
At least that's what speaks to you. And think about it too. What is the Sith? But the Scythian.
Yeah, exactly.
And the Scythian were some of the most magically powerful people, like I was talking about with the Tartars, because the Scythians were Tartars. And again, that phrase is not what a lot of people think of it to be. The barbarians, those diametrically opposed, magically, fighting the good fight against, Rome as we know it. Catholicism, whatever that behemoth you want to call it. Which there's a lot more to it, and touching on the homunculus is really important. Kind of opens people's minds to what's really going on. But yeah, the Sith and the Jedi and the Ewok. There's a Ewok. I can't remember the exact pronunciation, but there's a Native American group in the California Sierra Nevada region, and they're
Ewokoi.
Yeah, exactly. Iroquois. I mean, geez, yeah, I'd never made that connection. That's a great one. And they had such a magical creation story. And Casey says they're the closest living relation to Atlantis there is today. The Iroquois.
And if you guys know Dune, Arrakis, same root word, Iroquois, Arrakis.
Yeah. Dune's so great. Great movie. Great series.
I love Dune.
I love Dune too. And the spice trade.
Quan, can we see our faces? Can you put that back? We're done.
Can we see his face, Juan? Thank you.
Yeah, this is what the people are here for.
Yeah, look at this fucking specimen of a man, dude.
Let's
go ahead, bro.
To watch me eat brownies.
Hey.
These are actually lodestones.
Yum.
There you go, bro. Put it in your mouth.
There was a couple of connections I wanted to make. Who did these people first blame the missing oranges on? They blamed them on gypsies and carnival workers, circus people, freaks, perhaps. Right? That was their first. That was their first fear that they caught a. Show us all. Don't just do me. There we go. You get the idea. But I want to pull something up. How much do you guys know about carnies?
Like the
and
people
gypsies.
Yeah.
Where's the term gypsy come from?
Well, the term gypsy comes from Egypt, of course.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's a derogatory term, we're told. But as you find with a lot of these derogatory terms, like Indian or even Negro, is not always as racist in origin as you think. It might just turn out like that. But with gypsy, can I show my screen? Just a little phonetic pit stop.
You do whatever your heart desires.
Oh, I got a good little. That's so funny. I have a pictorial.
Can you show my screen?
Yeah,
okay.
it's on.
That summarizes this perfectly.
Okay, the Romani, right? The gypsy, as they're called.
The real Romans, yeah.
Egypt, the real Romans, exactly. Pushed out and wandering or roaming. They are Romans. They're roaming.
Yeah.
Well, within that word, we also have, right, Romani, Roman, Rama, Ramayana, Ramadan, right? You have row man, like to row a boat. So that's going to include your Welsh your Celtic, your Irish travelers, who are also called gypsies. Down there at the bottom, I think it says Irish travelers. It says they're distinct, but likely a similar origin. But significant concentrations of these people in the Americas. How did they get to the Americas? How are they concentrating in the Americas? That makes no sense. These people originate in Rajasthan, India, essentially. And that's the official origin. That's probably not the case.
Yeah, flip it.
But Indo-Aryan. Now, what I noticed as I started looking at gypsy is in phonetics, well, they come from the Western Hemisphere, right? Sorry, they come from the Eastern Hemisphere. Now they're in the Western Hemisphere, right? Significant concentrations. Well, what happens when you switch hemispheres, Ben, in language? What do? You switch back, you
Oh yeah, yep.
flip a word. So what's gyp backwards? Pig, pygmy, gypsies, pygmies,
Yep.
Egyptian.
The gypsies were always small.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and when the giants came in and pushed them out.
Except for the Irish travelers, who are some of the tallest people in the world. The Irish travelers, like Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury is a Irish gypsy, allegedly.
Mm-hmm.
But you also get the words Norman. If you rearrange that, Roman, Norman, and Orman. Right. But let's zoom out of there. But as I was learning about gypsy, hang on,
Great segue, because I have a lot of good ones here that I can share real quick. So keep going.
As I was learning about gypsy, right, they also blame this on carnivals. And the carnival, the circus, was not very far from here in Sarasota. You have the Ringling Circus. You have Ripley's in St. Augustine. And I have something, a little cherry on top at the end for you guys to show you something that's going to blow your mind. In St. Augustine, kind of puts this whole matter to rest as far as were there small people in Florida. But before that, carnies. What's a carny? Some would say that gypsy and a carny are the same thing, right? And you could talk about car, phonetically car, in the Bach saga for days and days. But I wanted to show you here, let me present my screen again. All right, and we're in. So, carny. What's a carny? A carny is a carnival worker, right?
Mm-hmm.
What blew my mind was that as I started learning about them, right, this culture is found on both sides of the Atlantic, believe it or not. Even in Australia, this carnival culture, these people. And this actually goes right back to the World Fairs. Some of the first circuses started out as kind of people wanted the World Fairs to keep on going, or to take them on the road, to bring them to the people that weren't willing to go there, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, they were giants, every kind of oddity from the old world. They
exactly.
were paid, and if they didn't want to be paid, they were kidnapped.
Right. So you have the elephants, you have the camels. I had a subscriber telling me that they personally find camel teeth in South Carolina.
Yep. Camels come from America.
Oh wow, that's a whole nother video.
Yep.
But
they were in Siberia, like we talked about on one of these shows.
For sure. Carny. So a carny, as it says here, they actually developed or have their own language.
And I have a picture of it here in an article. Whenever you want to get to it.
Isn't that strange? Now, you were talking about Janus. This part reminds me of Janus because Janus is also a god of chaos, a lord of misrule.
Yeah,
right.
The carnival was both.
Right. If Saturn is ruliness, if Saturn is order, then Janus, being Uranus, is chaos. Right. Now, let's read this. Carny is thought to have become popularized around 1931 in North America when it was first colloquially used to describe one who works at a carnival. The word carnival, originally meaning a time of merrymaking before Lent, and referring to a time denoted by lawlessness, often ritualized under a rule figure, and intended to show the consequences of social chaos. Kind of like a purge. That's what it seems like. A purge.
Oh yeah, and it was a purge in some
think
places.
About it. Ben, we were talking about the carnival and the circus on the episode you and I just did. That's unreleased, but this links perfectly up with that.
Absolutely.
How you're purging, you're exposing people to new sensory stimuli. The sounds, the bells, the whistles, the lights. Some of these people had never seen electricity before, and they're going into the regional circus, and they're having their minds fucking blown. Camels, elephants, motorcycles, all this shit.
Lions,
and of course,
giants, tattoo people.
Exactly. In an old world context, everyone I think understands where we're going with that. But their own language, that is something that really stood out to me. Right. In addition to carny jargon, some carnival workers used a special infix to render regular language unintelligible to outsiders. This style eventually migrated into wrestling, hip-hop, and other parts of modern culture. The British form of fairground cant is called polari. Why would it be called polari? Polaris, right?
Yep.
The flat Earth merry-go-round, as we call it, right?
Yep. The maypole, all of these things, yeah.
The maypole, right?
Yep.
Maze.
The lodestone.
What do you do at a carnival? At a carnival, you go to the corn maze, maybe.
Yeah.
Where you do the corn festivals.
Remember that video or that picture I sent you of the corn palace in Nebraska, made completely of corn.
Moorish, right?
I'll get that. Oh my gosh, this thing is crazy. I hope I can find it. It's but yeah, here really quick. If you'll show my screen, I have this. I have tons on gypsies, but here's a little taste of their pictorial language. Looks familiar, doesn't it?
Runic.
Runic, very, very. And you got the monad. You got Q. We could talk about the cross, what the real cross is. Yeah, the sun. But it's really interesting. And you basically read this verbatim. One of my favorite ones I have. The word gypsy is a corruption of Egyptians. The gypsies are found in most parts of Europe. They call themselves Roma, Coptic Rem, Pharaohs. The names given them by other nations are blah, 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 blah. And Tartar. The Tartars are gypsies.
Fair Roman. I'm not sure if people caught that. But
yeah. That's, again, what they're calling themselves. And here's, what they've... But this is what we were talking about with Tartars and what Tartars are. They are the gypsies. They're everyone that was driven from their homeland, which is quite a large... It's pretty much almost all of us today in almost all of America. A lot of Americans. I mean, how many people can really tell you 3 or 4 generations ago what their grandparents were really doing? Not many. least not many in America, which leads credence to the popular topic that's going around right now: homunculi, baby farms, cloning. Ties in with Star Wars. We're really kind of connecting a lot of dots here in a vague way, but
Yeah, Star Wars was the OG homunculus. I mean, the Attack of the Clones. The clones were the very first. They put it out there since the very beginning.
yeah.
You know.
And look at this is great because it ties in Tartar, nomad. The Tartars were gypsies. But yeah, I have more about Mother Teresa said Mother Teresa wants to kill all the gypsies. If anyone's dove into that family and Mother Teresa,
Yep.
you know how deep that hole goes. We don't need to go down that. But yeah, the gypsies were also Vikings, seamen. Yeah.
the Romans. They were doing the rowing, maybe. They might have been slaves,
Here's an interesting one since you brought up carnival. But this ties in with that Nebraska Corn Palace. So the Indians in Nebraska celebrated on, you guessed it, July 4th. Okay, is that a coincidence? I don't think so. Is that where America's birthday comes from? Anyways, Carnival of the King Tartarax, which is just the King of the Tartars. Rex, rocks, multiple spellings. It's REX, Tartar, which is king. And this ties in with the corn festivals that many of the Muskogee, the Cherokee, the Iroquois celebrate. But yeah, it was corrupted, and the Carnival of King Tartar was about giving thanks and celebration and abstaining from meat. I think obviously they were nodding to a previous age where they didn't have to live off the ground or live off hunting and animals and so forth. We've touched on this a little bit, that the previous ages, maybe one or two ago, where everyone was vegetarian. The city and canal structures of the world that were housing millions of people kind of nod to agriculture being the leading way of sustenance. But yeah, super interesting. This was celebrated all the way until like the early 1900s. And let's see if I can find. Oh, there it is. Beautiful. Look at this. Okay. That's completely made of corn.
That's some corn, baby. That's cornhub.com right there.
Think of this, right? Does this make any sense? I mean,
That
I know
is-
people in
that
this group aren't used to seeing, or are totally used to seeing crazy architecture. But when you study the corn stuff, it gets pretty crazy. And
Cornography.
I mean, look at that. The swastika, which we could spend a whole episode talking about that, but
It's a corn conspiracy, is what it is.
it's nuts. But yeah,
Wow.
Carnival. Anyways, we'll get back on topic there with the gypsy stuff.
Does corn freak on a leash? Corn? Is that a homunculus on a leash? We don't know, guys.
Oh, and well, we've talked about the Sumerians and the Anunnaki, and there's the popular idea that they're carrying around the pine cone, but are they really just carrying around corn? And the tree of life, was it maize? Well, there's plenty of cultures that say it is. Plenty of Mexican cultures and indigenous American cultures, Indian cultures, black, brown, copper colored, whatever. The corn festival was across many phenotypes. But yeah, it bridges a lot of gaps, and it connects with the giants and the pygmies. But yeah, so I'll let you get back on wherever you were going with the Romani and the gypsy stuff. You're muted. Oh, you want
Just to summarize, guys, what we've covered so far for people who maybe stopped in along the way. We have a small person miniature person, Homo floresiensis, possibly. That's, closest scientific term for what it would be. A dwarf, a gnome, found in Florida. Right, a lot of them eventually. And then we brought up the fact how Juan Ponce de Leon, the man who discovered Florida, allegedly, was himself very, very, very small, very short. But when you see his height, it actually says he was tall for the time, for his,
Like Napoleon.
Napoleon, they say, was like 5'7". That's where they kind of place him, around there, or maybe even a little shorter. This is Juan Ponce de Leon was 4'11".
Yeah.
That is short as hell. Okay, the Guatemalan people here in Lake Worth, who are some of the shortest people on the planet, the men are not even that. They're not even that short. But I also wanted to talk about the Guatemalan people. Here in South Florida, in some of these cities, Lake Worth being one of them, we have a extremely high concentration of Guatemalan people. Guatemalan people, believe it or not, are probably closest, Ben, tell me if you agree with this or not, closest genetically to what we would call the Olmec or the Maya. In fact, Guatemala, actually, you could look at it because an L can be, in Spanish, Guatemala, Guatemala, if that makes sense. Well, if you've watched us and Ben together, you've seen how I think the Maya or the Guatemalan also went by the word Xinca with an X, Xinca, like Inca with an X at the front. Xinca, Yinca. I don't know how you guys pronounce that.
It's sometimes double XI.
And basically, that's a name I think they went by, XINCA. And I might be mixing up Maya Olmec. I'm sorry. But basically, they'll tell you the Maya are closest related to the Guatemala, modern people. The Guatemala are some of the shortest people on the planet. You've got a bunch of them in Florida left over. And if you've been watching my channel, you know I place the Maya in Florida as well. Well, Juan Ponce de Leon was very, very, very short. Ed Leedskalnin of the Coral Castle, very, very short. He was about 5 foot flat. Juan Ponce de Leon was 4'11". Okay. Now, with the Guatemalan, I forgot to say this. To tie it into the Chinese, like we did in some other episodes, Guatemala is actually the Buddha's first name, Gautama. And Maya was the Buddha's mother's name. So you have the two names of Buddha in Guatemala. And with the Xinca, the Jin dynasty, however you say it, Zin, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Z, but the last letter sometimes was silent.
Well, there's also an XIN dynasty.
Yep.
The terracotta soldiers. They made the terracotta warriors, didn't they? The Zin, I think it was.
But there you have two. There you have two Chinese Buddhist connections.
Right. And there are many more, but yeah, in Guatemala,
many more.
They had what was called the Black Christ in Guatemala.
The Qin dynasty was the one.
They had a specific special group of mariners that would come from all over the globe, and their Mecca was in Guatemala. So, and who does that sound like? You know, it sounds like the Phoenicians to me. And these same people, I'm going to get the pronunciation wrong, but Danzites or Danzantes was the name of this same group of people that had their Mecca in Guatemala, and they were dark skinned, black skinned, and so Danzantes, I think is what it is. Then you got the tribe of Dan there again, which we've traced all over the Gulf. They're on the western side of Mexico as well. There are connections with them in China, Korea, Japan. You're muted.
Dania Beach, Florida.
Yeah. Yeah, and that article I shared with you about not only Marco Polo, which we touched on when I first got in here, but maybe we'll come full circle when we talk about the Z and what Marco Polo, he only told half his story, supposedly, whether you believe he was even a real person or not. But I think Prester John, Kublai, the Kabbalist king, the Kabbalah king, the Mecca king, right, is here in America. Chicago was called the White City. Katai, the capital, was called the White City. On old maps, maybe I'll find it here. I'll pull it up and we'll share it in a second. They show Kathai, where Chicago would be, and they have the western and southern part of America labeled Pygmy, which I have tons of Pygmies. A lot of the cliff dwellers were Pygmies. Lots of Pygmy mummies found in Utah, Colorado, New Mexico. The oldest skeleton that I'm aware of found in America was a Pygmy, and it was found in the La Brea tar pits with giants, huge mammoths, saber-toothed tigers, wolves that are 10 times as big as wolves today. Yeah. Keep going.
Great stuff.
I'm going to find that map.
Just want to see if there's anything else I wanted to cover. I did have one last thing I wanted to cover, I guess. In Florida, you showed us some articles that show how there were short peoples, smaller races, I don't know, subhuman, whatever you want to call them, living amongst humans, what we'd call quote unquote humans, giants, gnomes, humans, elves side by side.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what about Florida? Well, what if I told you, some people might say, well, those are articles, and articles can be just as fake as
Oh yeah, I've heard that argument a million times.
Well, what if I right, that I wasn't directed at you. That was
I know.
At all
Conjectures.
ignorant people. But what if I told you there is in Florida, in St. Augustine, Florida's oldest contiguous city, America's oldest contiguous city. What if I told you in that ancient city, the crown jewel of the American Tartaria, right? St. Augustine, named for St. Augustine, of course. Well, what if I told you in one of those hotels, a Moorish castle called Alcazar, Hotel Alcazar, in that castle, today called the Leitner Museum, there is a shrunken miniature head belonging to some type of thing that's probably not a human. And it's real, and it's on display. You guys want to see it?
Of course.
Pull it up.
All right, let's hit it. You guys ready for some shrunken head?
Always. Is it in a jar? I hope it is.
Shoddy, give me that shrunken head. I've heard of drunken head. I've never heard of shrunken head.
You ready? Let me know when you want me to pull it up.
Ready. Not ready.
Of course, you never are, bro. It's all right.
Boom. Shrunken head. Well, just, this is what a shrunken head is. Similar to scalping, head hunting was a practice done by many tribes. You know, I'm sure Europeans did it too, whatever tribe means. But you know, Ecuador, Peru, shrunken human heads, and they'll call them human. But how exactly do you shrink a head? Of course, they'll say anything to get around the possibility of there actually being shrunken humans that just are dead after the fact and were shrunken before they were dead or smaller. But, you know, ritualistic use, vengeance, war,
Dark arts for sure. A lot of the necro priests were all about the sunken heads.
So here is the Leitner Museum today. Before it was called the Hotel Alcazar in St. Augustine. That is a single poured concrete building. Single cast poured concrete building. That is a monolithic castle. It is perhaps the truest castle on the planet in the sense that a castle is cast. How many real castles do you know that were cast? Not many. There's the swimming pool on the inside, so you get the idea. Very odd place. That's the courtyard in the middle. It looks much more beautiful today with all the plants. And if you guys go there, it looks the same. Well, on display right here in that museum, you have a shrunken head.
Dang.
You tell me if that's a human. You think that's just a smaller head? I'm not so sure about that.
Can I add something, Doctor?
Of course. Yeah, for sure.
In Canterbury, because it's St. Augustine of Canterbury, there's a library there. And to tie it in full circle, because it's homunculus all the way down, well, there was actually grimoires dedicated to the creation of homunculus, found multiple copies at this library in Canterbury. So hinting at the fact that these monks, again, of the church, even John Dee had the Liber Vacae, which is a grimoire in order to create a homunculus. But even you could arguably say that St. Augustine perhaps had a copy of this grimoire to create homunculus. And we're talking about St. Augustine, the city in the United States. So again, just a small connection there with the oldest city in the United States and this figure who was you can literally tie him to the homunculus. So
can I show my screen again, please?
Yep.
So for people who might say, well, this is just a human that is actually shrunk. I agree. There probably are ways to shrink an entire. Where were we? There we are.
Yeah, I mean, some of these mummies shrink, but we're talking like max end is 20%, 30% at the most.
Another thing to point out, right here it says shrunken heads are known for their mandibular prognathism. Okay, facial distortion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, mandibular prognathism is a sign of prehominids, right? So this is not a human face that has been shrunken, because human faces have very little mandibular prognathism, right? Might be a little bit racial variation, but as soon as you see these shrunken heads, the brain goes back and the mouth goes forward. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Sloping foreheads, kind of like what I was talking about in that other article.
Oh, yeah. You can see by the nose. You can see by the shape. This is not a human face. Not in the sense you would think. This is not a standard human head. Right. This would have to be some extreme secluded aboriginal in order for it to be, human. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm with it 100%.
Yeah, and look at the guy that is behind that hotel. I mean, one of the founders of Florida.
Right.
Yeah.
That's Flagler's Hotel for people
Flagler.
that don't know.
Yeah, Daddy Flagler.
Well, and
So
look at the they renamed it the what? The Alcazar.
Well, it was the Alcazar.
It was.
Right.
And who
Yeah.
are the Khazars?
The
Now,
Khazars.
you look into them deep enough, they're some of the darkest magicians there are.
Well, if
Ooh.
we go look at, I agree. If we go look at
Nice
Bach
weave on that.
Tower on the mountain with the dwarves, Tolkien definitely used the Khazars as inspiration for the dwarves.
Hmm.
And
Hoarders.
we know that by the words he used. Can you see my screen?
No, you
Short,
took
stocky, brutish, hoarders. They loved caves.
And I mean, look at the whole Knights Templar with the head of John the Baptist. So using the head of a prophet to prophesize for divination purposes, again as a talisman. These I believe all these guys had weird trinkets, and literally in their museums they probably own these things and collected them. I mean, they were super wealthy. They had the cape, the kapok tree.
Can you see my screen? Can you show my screen, please? So here in Iron Mountain, right? Iron Mountain, Florida, in Lord of the Rings. That's the Iron Mountains where the dwarves lived. Well, down here at the bottom, Gror and his successor and grandson, Dane, the second Ironfoot. Well, Dane, right? We were just talking about the Dans, tribe of Dan, the Danes. But down here at the bottom, Khazad.
Mm-hmm.
The dwarves, also known as the Khazad, right? Or the Khazari, the stunted people. The Gonerim, the people with gonorrhea. Gonerim. Khazad, well, that's a clear reference to Khazaria. Caesar, the czars.
Yeah, the Khazars and the Karaite priests. So the light versus dark references, you can find a lot of that. I mean, not a lot, but you dig enough, you read a lot about the wars between them. And they were summoning tornadoes. And I mean, we're talking like Lord of the Rings type magic. Like they had physical people with swords fighting, but they also had their most adept priests raising all kinds of hell.
Well, that's what they say. That's what they say. Plate armor was because the Greeks fought day in, day out with little to no armor, right? So why is it that in the medieval times, and you can actually read, I've read, the complete works of Plato, they talk about the advent of heavy armor, heavy suits of armor in ancient Greece. So they had considered heavy armor complete suits of armor. It's not like that was a technological advancement in medieval times. That's not the case. They knew what armor was. They knew you could cover a person in armor, right? They covered horses and elephants in armor and stuff. Well, when did armor start getting introduced? In the Middle Ages, as far as the full suit of armor that we think of, the European with the face covered, every square inch of the body covered, right? Well, when you start thinking of what do they call them? Fabergé cage.
Yeah.
That's the egg.
I know what you're talking about.
Confusing
The EM cage.
Yeah, it's not Fabergé. Fabergé is the egg. I'm thinking of something. Someone in the chat will say it. Someone in the chat will think of it. Faraday cage. A Faraday cage. And
Nicolas Cage.
There you go.
Hey, Face Off, Janice.
Face Off. We have to do movie nights. We got to do movie nights.
Oh, dude, Face Off's a great one.
Face Off.
Lots of symbology in that one, actually.
Yeah. Well, it's an Aquarius and a Capricorn too. That's Janice. That's January. Hello.
Yep.
An Aquarius and a Capricorn. John Travolta and Nicolas Cage. But that's another episode.
Okay.
Suits of armor. Think of the electromagnetic implications. Think of the Tartarian implications. Antiquitech. Okay? Having a full suit of armor. If people have seen the New Earth channel, I think that was one of the first Tartarian pages. Really kicked it off with the Survivors of Atlantis series. Great stuff. I think a lot of their stuff's taken off YouTube. New Earth. They did a great series about armor.
Fabulous.
Armor. And how armor was maybe not protecting against swords and arrows. Because did you know, in the Battle of Agincourt with the English longbows, knights in full heavy suit plates of armor were still completely vulnerable to arrows.
Oh yeah, they go right through it.
So what the fuck is the point of having a 80, 100 plus suit of armor on? Right? If you're still susceptible to an arrow being shot at you from, close to half mile away, whatever the range you're dealing with like a longbow, why is it that the suit of armor is it being introduced right along with the longbow? That pretty much makes the suit of armor obsolete. I'm not a medieval arms expert by any means, but just that simple fact that a full suit of armor is susceptible to a common arrow, right around the year 1200, 1300, the common bow could go through a suit of armor. So what were the suits of armor defending against? What was the real value in them?
I think that's what Crowley was trying to portray in his chariot card with Ophiuchus occulted, veiled by the full armor. It's the full metal alchemist. I think it's like a talisman type of thing.
Thinking about electronic warfare, electric warfare, electromagnetic weapons, plasma, right? Wizard fights, wizard battles, stuff like that.
Augmentation.
It's not ridiculous,
You want to share my screen really quick?
Sure.
And I'll show you what real wizards look like and what they wore.
So this isn't what a wizard looks like then?
Well, I mean, you give them the right suit of armor, and it's not. This is if anyone's read about the Ark of the Covenant, Aaron's rod, the jar of manna, jars of battery, the rods grounding, and the ark was a weapon. And I have this labeled techno garb, but here you have the 12 stones of the 12 tribes. Diamond, Saturn, amethyst, ruby, so on and so forth. And this is how you would wear it. Okay.
Interesting.
People are familiar. So here are your two rods, your grounding rods. People are familiar with the stones that some of the Jews wear on their foreheads. Well, there's a lot more to it than you think. And with the right verbiage, you can control the weather and plasma. This is what we were dealing with. And you put someone like that on a tower, the tower is an antenna. And this is the kind of stuff they were doing. But yeah, since you brought it up, I just wanted to share that. This is a Lee Vandahar Atlas, and he's describing, the garb of, the priest, the magician. And I think they were filled with perhaps radium. I don't know exactly, but radium magnifies. And yeah, you can do crazy stuff with radium, especially when you put it on your forehead, your pineal gland. You can only imagine what they were able to summon. But yeah, they could tear this guy's asunder.
Well, just radium's supposed to be an octave of gold.
Right. Amplification. But yeah, so since you were talking about it, and here's the map I wanted to show.
That map don't stop, boy.
This is North America.
That map thick as fuck.
You got Cathay right here on older maps.
That map's trying to get spanked.
Yeah, it looks like a fat ass for sure. But yeah, right where Chicago is, it's labeled Katai. Got the pygmies on the west coast. The desert, Canada's labeled a desert, which correlates with a lot of my pictorial evidence writings from the 1700s, early 1800s. You had camels all over Canada and northern Siberia. But yeah,
I'm sorry, analog. I don't know.
Oh no, it's all good.
Sorry, bro.
I don't blame you at all.
Baby got mapped. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Things, after 2.5 hours, just everything starts to morph into other.
Yeah. Here's Kublai Khan's city of Peking. Circus City, But yeah.
I'm done.
Catch your breath.
Yeah, I just gotta breathe because fucking narco, man.
Hey, it's all good. But yeah. Super interesting, What's another good one? Since we're talking about maps and cities, what's the stone? Yeah. What's this called again? You would know.
What, Mount Meru?
The alchemist stone.
Oh shit!
Is that from the amphitheater of eternal wisdom?
Yeah. Man, what is it called though?
Mm.
The philosopher's stone. Right? I think so.
Damn, it's that big? Or the Rosetta? Somebody said Rosetta
Stone?
No. This is a problem when you have thousands and thousands. It all blends together. Since we were talking about stones and Ben stones and all that, this is called a coronation chair. A meteorite was put under the chair, and if the wrong person sat in the chair, the meteorite would hiss and squeal, and that person wasn't allowed to be king. Really interesting. Coronation chair. Worth a lot of a deep dive there. But yeah, it's called the Jacob stone. Jacob's ladder. Who is Jacob? Really interesting background on Jacob. The kings. Your boys talked about this. You still there, Longo?
I'm still here. Don't worry.
What's the line of Jacob? And
the
Saxor connection.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And
Queen of England.
And how did they steal the throne? Well, the stone has a lot to do with it.
Yep.
And the sword and the stone is the same concept. The stone chooses the person.
Yep. Got to get rid of the stones if you're gonna steal the throne.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. Kind of full circle there, but yeah. Anyways, where do you want to go next?
Yeah. What else we got? Let me see. Is there anything else I wanted to cover?
But yeah, the garb thing is really interesting, and the wizard's staff and the wizard's wand and all of these things, they are related. It's the same thing. They're devices, amplification. Often these wands and staves had crystals connected with them, and Jacob's rod, he's grounding himself. The ground and the device, and the stave is part of that. It's
right, and a rod. What's a rod backwards?
Yeah, exactly.
Door.
Mm-hmm. You're opening doorways for sure.
Mm-hmm. You have a rod and a doorway. That's kind of like a yin and yang, masculine, feminine. The rod and the door, right? Backwards, like dog and God. We are to God as dogs are to us. Right.
Yeah. This is a cool, interesting one. They found the Ark of the Covenant in a cave in Alabama. Just, It's right on the Gulf, so I figure why not bring it up. But definitely interesting. 3 mummies, a golden case, cherubim, the rod, jar of manna. You know, who knows, but interesting. But yeah, what were you saying about the dog? Sorry.
I don't know, man.
I cut you off, sorry.
I think we covered it all.
Yeah.
But
Juan, you should sum it up, because this is definitely your baby as far as the conversation.
mhm.
Homunculus and Florida.
Mm-hmm. What are tie it all in? I'll tie it all in one sentence before he does. These runaway races. One of the attitudes towards the human race in the Bible is that the human race is a runaway race, an escaped lab experiment. What are these races other than all these races, these offshoots of humanity are always described kind of as mistakes in the Bible. Everything's a mistake, right? And that's kind of an attitude that the Illuminati has a lot of the time, that humanity is a mistake and needs to get reset all the time. And
Illuminati confirmed.
You get the idea. But, how many of these races, how many animals had their origin in a laboratory, in an ancient laboratory, in a prehistoric laboratory, right? Maybe not in a laboratory at all, but genetic genome modification, genome gnomes, right? Gnomic modification.
Santa's helpers.
Santa's helpers, exactly. Ancient alien. This has ancient alien written all over it. You guys know what I think about aliens. But it's the story of Zechariah Stitchin. Tied into it, of course, the elves. The Phoenicians were elves. Much of their whatever. I said I was going to use one sentence. Sorry.
A long ass sentence, bro.
Sorry, Juan.
I like where you're going with that.
What's your take on that, Juan?
No. I think it's. I've always said that the OG, if Florida is the alchemical vessel, then the Florida man is the homunculus. It's all goes back to the OG Florida man. Maybe it could have been, these different figures in history, if they were even real, or if they're just egregores, if they are just thought forms, topos, whatever, if they are runaway gnomes, right? According to Paracelsus, they grow up to be mythological creatures or dwarves, gnomes, things of that nature. Maybe the skunk ape, who knows? But yeah, I think that whatever's going on, it goes so deep that I think we're just scratching at the surface. And yeah, I'm just glad that Narco finally came around with the homunculus and came beating my door down to come on and talk about it, because he's like, dude, I'd never seen him call me that quick. So yeah, dude, I'm really happy we did this, and I think we covered all the ground, and I'm excited for the next one.
Yeah, we're gonna be doing more of these lives. I think this is only like my third real live video. Hopefully you guys are getting to know Ben around the channel as well. But I guess we'll start saying our goodbyes. Juan, guys, you know where to find Juan at the One on One podcast. The homunculologist. How do you say it?
Homuncologist.
What about homunculist? You gotta just homunculist would be so.
It's whatever you want it to be, doctor. I mean, you know what I mean? I'll change it just for you, bro.
Homuncologist. I don't know if anyone can say that on the first go.
That's how you know they're initiated, if they can say it. That's how I test people out. You know what I'm saying? So,
But you guys can find him at the One on One podcast. You do some other podcasts. What else do you do?
I got a bunch of stuff, bro. I got a comic book. I got a journal. I got a YouTube channel too. It's a Juan on Juan podcast. It's streaming on there as well. And yeah, the juanonjuanpodcast.com. Find me on there. And I produce stuff with you. I produce stuff. I'm all about the content. So I'm here for it. Talk about homunculus all the time. The occult, magic, all the good stuff. Old world history. So you can find me on there. Instagram is my main jam at the Juan on Juan podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
And Ben, as he's known on this channel, people can find you on Instagram and Twitter at 1_analog_9, right?
Yep, on both.
Or Waking Up with Analog. I think you can probably find it. Look, just searching Waking Up with Analog. In the process of building up that YouTube channel, I know everyone's like, where's his YouTube? Where's his content? Blah, blah, blah. People are foaming at the mouths for more articles.
Well, I'm here, happy to talk about this subject. It's a good one. I've been talking about homunculus and thought forms and egregores for a long time. And, 3, 4, 5 years ago, there wasn't really much to talk about with anybody. So
An OG.
it's refreshing for sure. Yeah. And to sum it up, kind of what we've been talking about. Yeah. Like you said, if we can have an audience that'll open their mind enough to think about giant trees and Florida and the Yucatan and the Gulf being completely terraformed and man-made, as above, so below, so are the creatures of Eden and the people inhabiting that area. It's one and the same. And I think people kind of have a stigma with that idea, but we're just energy inhabiting a vessel, where'd the vessel come from? Really, that's the question. But it's the same with the ground we walk on. Yeah. And thanks for having me.
It's about unveiling the mind. You know what I'm saying?
100%. Hey, and shout out Mind's Unveiled. He's covering a lot of ground with this right now. So.
Daddy Mind Unveiled. You
shout out Mind Unveiled.
Yeah, you refer to him as proper title.
Moo.
Great guy. Good videos. If you don't know him, check him out. But yeah, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure having both of you guys on. Thank you. I might be going on live tonight. I don't know, with someone. We'll see. But thanks both you guys. Great contributions. A good topic. Might have to do another video, not just on the Florida small people, but maybe the southeastern United States.
Mm-hmm.
Just the Western Hemisphere in general. Because, of course, you have the pygmy people in South America and pygmy people in Africa. Lots more rabbit holes to go down.
So many, yeah. I got
definitely
giant monsters hunting pygmies in Borneo and North Australia, and yeah, it's crazy.
Let's do it again.
Yeah.
So again next week.
I think we'll sign off here. Everyone have a good night.
Love you guys.
Have a great night, guys.
Bye.
Bye.